You want to marry me? Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. I didn't expect that he and I would end up dying in this place together. Is this really fate? The absolute beauty murmured, her eyes somewhat complicated. At this moment, the layer of ice covering her body was even thicker. Her eyes were a little dazed and her vitality was getting weaker and weaker. The vine's head was huge. Lu Ming rushed into its mouth and realized that it was empty inside. Boom! Lu Ming released a powerful aura and wanted to kill the vine. However, from all directions, endless cold air enveloped Lu Ming, trying to freeze him to death. This kind of cold chi was extremely terrifying. It was condensed by the gem on the vine's head. If it were anyone else, even if they had the cultivation of the absolute beauty, they would probably be frozen to death. However, Lu Ming had the measure formula. The measure formula glowed and a mysterious energy covered Lu Ming's body. The terrifying cold air would be devoured and absorbed by the measure formula as soon as it got close to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was not affected at all. Lu Ming, wait a minute. It's useless for you to attack like this. It's hard to kill it completely without hitting its core. The quantity formula said. Core? Where is the core of this vine? Lu Ming asked. This vine is not an ordinary plant. It is born from extreme cold chi, so it must have a core. I can sense it. Move forward. The quantity formula said. The vine's head was a few thousand meters long and wide. It was very large. Lu Ming flew a few hundred meters and saw that there were many fine vines above it. They were wrapped around a crystal core the size of a human head and were connected to each other. That's the core of the vine. As long as you break it, the vine will die. The quantity formula said. All right. Without any hesitation, Lu Ming was about to launch an attack. At this moment, the vine seemed to sense the impending danger. It frantically gathered the cold air and rushed towards Lu Ming like a storm. Even an ordinary first-year divine king would be frozen to death by such cold air. However, Lu Ming was not affected at all. The cold chi was absorbed by the quantity formula and could be used to adjust the energy in the core of the star. Moon slaying. Lu Ming circulated his divine power and shot out. Boom! The spear radiance struck the crystal core, causing it to shake violently before exploding. And NBSP roar. CSISI. The vine let out all kinds of ear-piercing cries, and its huge body scurried around. Finally, it fell to the ground with a loud bang, motionless, and completely breathless. Die. He's dead? The absolute Bowtie's eyes revealed surprise. However, her current condition was getting worse and worse, and she was about to fall into a coma. Bang! The vine's head exploded and Lu Ming appeared on top of it. He swept his gaze across the area and frowned when he saw the state of the absolute beauty. Should I save him or not? Lu Ming muttered. According to Lu Ming's character, he did not want to save her because this woman had been hunting him down. Since she was an enemy, Lu Ming would definitely not show mercy. However, this woman had saved him twice. Previously, he had faced the white-haired youth. Now, he was facing the vines. No matter what the other party's purpose was, he had indeed saved him. Especially this time, in order to save him, he had sacrificed himself. Save him. Finally, Lu Ming muttered. He had his own principles. Since the other party had saved him, he had to return the favor. Lu Ming took a step forward and arrived beside the beautiful woman. This woman has been hit by that vine. The cold has already attacked her heart. In at most 10 minutes, she will be completely frozen to death. The quantity formula said. Lu Ming nodded and sized up the beautiful woman carefully. To be honest, this absolute beauty was really beautiful. The clothes on her body were slightly torn by the vines, revealing a large area of her snow-white skin. In addition, he was motionless at the moment and looked like he was at the mercy of others. Lu Ming's heart wavered when he saw this. "You! What are you trying to do?" the beautiful woman said nervously, but her voice was weak. "What do you think?" Lu Ming smiled evilly. This smile made the woman's face turn even paler and filled her with despair. "I'll ask you some questions. If you can answer them, I'll consider letting you go," Lu Ming said. "What do you want to ask?" "Go ahead and ask," the Absolute Beauty said. "Why do you want to kill me? And why did you save me?" Lu Ming asked. This was what he was most curious about. The Absolute Beauty gritted her teeth, seemingly unwilling to say. "You're not going to tell me, right? If you don't, then don't blame me." Lu Ming smiled evilly and touched the beautiful woman's face. The touch was extremely cold. A terrifying chill rushed toward Lu Ming's palm. Lu Ming circulated his divine power to dispel it. "Stop, stop, I'll talk," the Absolute Beauty said in a panic. Lu Ming looked at the other party and did not say a word, waiting for him to continue. "Because if I don't kill you, I'll marry you. If I don't want to marry you, I'll have to kill you," the Absolute Beauty said. "What? What?" Lu Ming was dumbfounded. He thought that he had heard wrongly. "You want to marry me? Beauty, we've never met before. Why do you want to marry me?" Lu Ming was really dumbfounded. "Are you Prince Jing Ye's successor?" the Absolute Beauty suddenly said. Lu Ming was so shocked that he almost jumped. How did the other party know that Lu Ming was the successor of Jingyu? He did not tell anyone about this. "How did you know?" Lu Ming's face darkened and his eyes were filled with killing intent. This matter could not be leaked out. Jingyu had been framed back then, and he had a terrifying enemy in the Great Void Holy Dynasty. If the secret that he was Startled Feather's inheritor were to be revealed, he would most likely be killed. "My father told me," the Absolute Beauty said. "Your father?" Lu Ming's heart turned cold. Could it be that he had been exposed? "My father is in the Universal Camp. When you were fighting with the others in the Universal Camp, my father happened to pass by and he saw through you," the Absolute Beauty said. "Your father?" Lu Ming muttered, his mind spinning rapidly. Other than fighting with Frigid Eagle in the Universal Camp, he had not fought at all. Could it be that he had been recognized at that time? "Who is your father? How did you recognize me? And what does this have to do with you marrying me?" Lu Ming asked a few questions in succession. "My father was Prince Jingyu's teacher back then. He followed Prince Jingyu for countless years, so it's only natural that my father would be able to recognize his successor," the Absolute Beauty said. "Jingyu's teacher?" Lu Ming was slightly stunned. This was really beyond his expectations. "My father is proficient in the art of numerancy. He predicted that Prince Jingyu's successor was about to be born. Furthermore, he swore an oath that he would marry his daughter, me, to the successor of Prince Jingyu. My father believed that Prince Jingyu was framed. He wanted me to help Prince Jingyu's successor find out the truth," the Absolute Beauty continued. Oriole behind. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. My father wanted me to marry you, but I didn't want to. So, I had to kill you. The beautiful woman's voice turned cold. Lu Ming understood a lot after listening to the Absolute Bowtie's words. Her father was Jing Ye's teacher, and he was well versed in the art of divination. He knew that Jing Ye's successor was about to be born, and thus, he wanted his daughter to marry him. It was only when Lu Ming was fighting with Lang Ying at the Universal Camp that the beautiful lattice father saw him and recognized him. It was no wonder that the absolute beauty wanted to kill Lu Ming as soon as she saw him. Since you want to kill me, why did you save me? Lu Ming asked again. Father wants me to marry you and protect you. So, you have to die. You can only die in my hands, not in the hands of anyone else. The absolute beauty said. As she said this, her voice became weaker and weaker. This logic is really weird. Lu Ming pursed his lips and was rather speechless. However, according to this logic, it made sense. If that was the case, he had to save this absolute beauty even more. It wasn't because of her beauty, but because she was the daughter of teacher Jingyu. From the looks of it, those who had followed Jingyu back then hadn't been completely suppressed. There were still people alive. In the future, if he were to help Jingyu reverse his verdict, he would still need the help of these people. Lu Ming squatted down and held the beautiful woman's hand. You. What are you doing? You said that you would let me go if I answered your question. You can't go back on your word, the absolute beauty panicked. She thought that Lu Ming was going to do something to her. What are you panicking for? I'm saving you. Lu Ming smiled faintly and channeled a stream of divine power into the beautiful woman's body. However, the moment the divine power entered the other's body, it was frozen by the terrifying cold air in the other's body. Her body has been completely frozen by the cold air, and it's almost frozen to her heart and brain. If these two places are frozen, she's going to die. The quantity formula said. Can you suck out the cold qi in her body? Lu Ming asked. Of course I can, but I can't expose myself. Put your palm on her palm and it'll draw the cold out of her body. But this way, it will be slower. The quantity formula said. If the measure formula appeared directly and the devouring power enveloped the beautiful woman, it would be easy to absorb the cold qi in her body. However, if that were the case, the measure formula would be exposed. The origin ancient word could not be exposed now, or else it would bring a great disaster. It doesn't matter if it's slow. Lu Ming said. Then, his palm and the beautiful woman's palm touched. The beautiful woman's palm had been frozen into ice. It was as cold as a piece of 10,000-year-old ice. When they stuck to each other, the measure formula burst out with an attractive force. It flowed along Lu Ming's palm and rushed into the beautiful woman's body. The cold air in the beautiful woman's body was continuously absorbed by Lu Ming's palm and then entered the measure formula. The absolute beauty blinked her eyes twice. She was rather curious. She did not expect Lu Ming to have such means. Initially, she thought that she was dead for sure. Buzz. Buzz. And NBSP whoosh. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. It came from the direction of the passageway that Lu Ming and the rest had entered from. There's someone. Lu Ming's expression changed. He didn't expect that someone would be able to find their way in here. The next moment, 5 figures appeared in the underground space. It's them. Lu Ming saw 5 figures at a glance. They were the white-haired young man and the other 4 he had met earlier. The white-haired young man and the other 4 swept their gazes across the room and their eyes landed on Lu Ming and the beautiful lady. They were shocked to see the beautiful lady, but their eyes lit up when they swept their gazes across the scene. They were not stupid. After seeing the corpse of the vine and the situation of Lu Ming and the beautiful woman, how could they not guess? Ha ha ha, this is the Myriad River's ice vine. I didn't expect that this place would actually give birth to a Myriad River's ice vine. What great luck! A young man laughed excitedly when he saw the corpse of the vine. His eyes were filled with a fiery light. The greatest luck is that the Myriad River ice vine has been killed. We don't have to do anything now, ha ha ha. Another young man laughed. It's you? Get lost. The absolute beauty shouted coldly when she saw the white-haired young man and the others. Ioyo, you're still so arrogant. Did we interrupt your date with your little lover? Hee, you're still so arrogant in your current state. You really don't know what's good for you. The white-haired young man cried out as he stared at the beautiful woman with an unfriendly look. The absolute beauty was furious, and her almond-shaped eyes widened. If it wasn't for the fact that her entire body was frozen by the cold air, she would have immediately attacked and taught the white-haired youth and the others a profound lesson. You what? With your current condition, do you still want to deal with us? You can't even protect yourself, right? The white-haired young man sized up the beautiful woman and revealed an unscrupulous smile. A beauty like you is rare. Don't worry, I'll let you have a good time before I kill you. Ha! The white-haired young man laughed. The absolute Bowtie's face turned pale in an instant. She naturally knew what the white-haired young man was going to do. Quick, Lu Ming, kill me. I'm begging you, kill me, the absolute beauty sent a voice transmission to Lu Ming. She would rather die than be humiliated by the white-haired young man. How unlucky, Lu Ming muttered. He didn't expect that the white-haired young man and the others would come again after he dealt with the vines. Lu Ming could escape from the white-haired young man and the rest. The key was that he had yet to obtain the gem on the vine's head. It would be a pity to leave like this. Moreover, he might not be able to escape safely if he were to leave with the absolute beauty. Lu Ming's eyes darted around and he began to think of countermeasures. Third brother, let's hurry up and get rid of this brat, lest a long night brings trouble. One of the young men said. All right, leave this kid to me. You guys collect the corpse of the Myriad River's ice vine and leave this place after quickly dealing with it. With that, the white-haired young man walked toward Lu Ming, while the other young men walked toward the vines. One of the young men walked up to the vine and tried to use a storage ring to store the vine's body. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. The vines that were originally motionless suddenly moved again. Hoo. A few vines started to dance like snakes and charged towards the young men. This situation was beyond everyone's expectations. The vine clearly had no life left, so why did it suddenly move again? Not only the white-haired young man, but even Lu Ming and the beautiful woman were stunned. Ah! Caught off guard, one of the young men was directly pierced by a vine. Then, with a swing of the vine, he picked up the young man and smashed him heavily onto the ground. Boom! The ground trembled, and the young man was killed on the spot. Speed up, please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. The white-haired young man and the rest were a total of 5 people. The white-haired young man walked towards Lu Ming and the absolute beauty while the other 4 walked towards the Myriad River ice vine. The Myriad River's ice vine suddenly launched an attack and one of the 9th-level celestial deity youths was killed immediately. The other 8 vines danced wildly and attacked the other 3 youths. Bang! Bang! 2 of the young men reacted slightly faster and exploded with attacks to block, but they were still hit by the vines. Their bodies were sent flying and they crashed into the wall, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. There was another woman who was not so lucky. Her reaction was slightly slower and she was immediately entangled by a vine. The temperature of the vines was shockingly low. As the woman was wrapped by the vines, her body was immediately covered in a layer of ice. The vine pulled the woman toward its big mouth. Help, help, the woman struggled with all her might and screamed. Release him! The white-haired young man roared. He took a step forward and rushed toward the Myriad River's ice vine. In the process, he turned into an ice snow lion and roared. A terrifying storm rushed toward the Myriad River's ice vine. Boom! Boom! The white-haired young man's attack landed on the vines of the Myriad River's ice vine, causing a violent vibration. However, the vines of the Myriad River's ice vine were extremely tough, so the white-haired young man's attack couldn't break them at all. The vine was still pulling the woman into the mouth. "Help!" The woman cried out in despair. "Let's attack together." The white-haired young man roared as he continuously struck out with his sharp claws. His claws were like the blades of a divine blade as he clawed at the vines. Clang! The sharp claws scratched the rattan, making a sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew in all directions, but they could only leave a few marks on the rattan. Even the most beautiful woman couldn't break the vines, so the white-haired young man naturally couldn't either. At this moment, the other two young men who had been sent flying by the vines also pounced over. They transformed into ice snow lions and fought with the vines. However, it was of no help. Buzz! The vine wrapped around the woman and threw her into its mouth. The woman's cry suddenly stopped, and there was no sound. The Myriad River's ice vine's mouth was filled with a terrifying chill. The woman was thrown in and naturally couldn't resist it. Roar! After devouring the woman, the Myriad River ice vine roared madly. The 9 vines rushed towards the white-haired young man and the other 2 madly. The shadows of the vines covered the sky and enveloped the 3 of them. At this moment, even if the white-haired young man and the other 2 wanted to escape, it would be difficult. They tried to attack a few times, but were blocked by the vines. "I'll fight you to the death." The white-haired young man roared and fought with the Myriad River ice vine. "My strength is not as good as before," Lu Ming muttered. He realized that the strength of the Myriad River's ice vine was much weaker than when he was fighting with them. Otherwise, the white-haired young man and the others would have been in danger. But now, the white-haired young man and the other 2 were able to fight against the Myriad River ice vine. "I didn't expect this ice vine to have a secondary core," the quantity formula said. "Subcore?" Lu Ming was puzzled. "That's right. This Myriad River's ice vine has a subcore in addition to its main core. Just now, when you shattered the main core, the Myriad River's ice vine wasn't completely dead. It was awakening its subcore. However, a subcore is a subcore after all. It's far from being comparable to the main core. It seems that this ice vine's spiritual intelligence has been greatly reduced. It has already gone crazy and only knows how to attack. Its strength has also been greatly reduced," the quantity formula explained. Lu Ming understood. He could not help but secretly rejoice in his heart. It turned out that the Myriad River's ice vine had a subcore. Fortunately, the white-haired young man and the rest had come. Otherwise, if Lu Ming had gone to retrieve the gem on the Myriad River's ice vine's head and the Myriad River's ice vine suddenly woke up and attacked, the consequences would be unpredictable. This won't do. If this goes on, the winner will be decided very soon. At that time, it will be disadvantageous for both of us. We must absorb the cold qi from her body as soon as possible. Old Liang, can't you be faster? Lu Ming sent a voice transmission to the quantity formula. If I hurry, I'll be easily exposed. And your palms are separated by palms, too far from her heart and brain. The heart and brain are both fragile parts. If I increase my strength, the cold air will hurt her heart and brain. The quantity formula said. Then how can we increase the speed? Lu Ming asked again. It's simple. Place one hand on her forehead and the other on her heart. This way, I'll be able to perform better when we're closer. The quantity formula said. Lu Ming was in a difficult position. It was fine if it was stuck to the forehead, but if it was stuck to the girl's heart, it was a little. Hurry up. You're a man and yet you're still so wishy-washy. Don't say that I didn't warn you when the outcome of the battle is decided. The quantity formula called out. Then. All right. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and stared at the beautiful woman. Miss, you can see the situation now. In order to save you as soon as possible, I'm sorry. With that, Lu Ming placed one hand on the beautiful woman's forehead and his other hand on her heart. You. What are you doing? No, don't, the woman cried out. However, Lu Ming could not be bothered with her. He placed his palm on the woman's heart. The woman's voice stopped abruptly. She stared at Lu Ming with her big, watery eyes. Her eyes were filled with anger, shyness, and other complicated emotions. Her originally white face had also turned red. Cough cough. Being stared at so intently, Lu Ming could not help but feel a little embarrassed despite his thick skin. He coughed a few times and said to the quantity word formula, "Old Liang, you'd better hurry." "Leave it to me," the quantity formula glowed. A strong suction force flowed along Lu Ming's palm and entered the beautiful woman's heart and brain, absorbing the cold air in her body. The cold qi in her body was absorbed by the Liang word art at an alarming rate. The ice on the beautiful woman's body quickly melted and disappeared. Her body gradually regained its warmth. At this moment, the battle between the three-headed snow lion and the Myriad River ice vine had already entered a state of white heat. Although the Myriad River's ice vine only had its subcore left, it had lost its intelligence and was completely mad. Its combat strength was also extremely terrifying, suppressing the three-headed snow lion. Finally, one of the frost lions couldn't hold on any longer and an ice vine pierced through its head, killing it on the spot. As such, only the white-haired youth and the other youth were left. "Third brother, what should we do? Are we going to die here?" the other young man said in fear. This young man was also a half-step divine king. He was slightly weaker than the white-haired young man, but he was still very strong. They had tried many times to rush out, but the 9 vines were waving so tightly that they were airtight, completely blocking their retreat. Blue Spirit, please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. Today, only by killing him will we have a chance to kill him. His vital point is that head. Let's join forces and kill him. The white-haired young man was a decisive man. Since he couldn't escape, he could only risk his life. The two of them came up with a plan through voice transmission. Roar! Roar! The 2 snow lions roared and used the lion's roar technique. The air was overbearing and blew away a few vines. Then, the 2 rushed towards the vines' heads. However, there were 9 vines in total. Immediately, the rest of the vines shot towards the 2 frost lions. "I'll block the vines, you go and kill him." At this moment, an ice snow lion roared loudly. His entire body was burning with divine power. He opened his mouth and roared. One after another, lions flew out from his mouth and charged towards the vines. This was a secret technique that was condensed from divine power. This frost lion was going all out. It burned its divine power and activated a terrifying secret technique. Boom! 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 The lions rushed out one after another, slamming into the vines and actually temporarily pushing away the 9 vines. How could the white-haired young man miss such an opportunity? His entire body glowed and he roared as he charged towards the head of the Myriad River's ice vine. He waved his sharp claws and streaks of claw radiance clawed at the head of the Myriad River's ice vine. Roar! The Myriad River's ice vine roared and opened its mouth. Icicles shot out from its mouth and collided with the white-haired youth's claw radiance. At the same time, the ultimate cold gem on the head of the Myriad River ice vine glowed. A white beam of light shot toward the white-haired youth. This beam of light was extremely terrifying and its speed was shocking. Previously, even the absolute beauty and Lu Ming could not avoid it. The white-haired young man naturally couldn't avoid it and was hit by the white beam. The white-haired youth's body stiffened as soon as he was hit by the white light. A layer of ice crystals appeared on the surface of his body at an alarming speed. The snow lion cultivated divine power of the cold attribute and it controlled divine-grade divine power, but it could not block the cold air of the light beam. Bang! The white-haired young man's huge body fell to the ground, unable to move at all. He wasn't dead yet, and his eyes were filled with fear. Roar! The other snow lion let out a furious roar. However, there was only one snow lion left, and it was even less of a match for the 10,000 rivers ice vines. The 9 ice vines danced wildly, attacking the snow lion like a storm. Soon, the snow lion couldn't hold on any longer. Its body was hit continuously and it was seriously injured. If we're going to die, well, die together. The ice lion's eyes were filled with madness as it charged towards the Myriad River ice vine, its body emitting a blinding white light. He was going to self-destruct. In the next moment, with a terrifying explosion, the frost lion self-destructed, and the terrifying energy swept through the entire underground space. Not good. Lu Ming reached out and grabbed the beautiful woman's slender waist. His figure flashed and he retreated far away. He set up layers of defense in front of him to offset the impact of the outside world. The light dissipated, and the self-destructing snow lion had disappeared. The white-haired youth who was frozen and on the verge of death had also completely fallen. As for the Myriad River's ice vine, it was obviously injured as well. It was at the center of the explosion, and there were several big holes in its head. Its aura was much weaker. Roar! The Myriad River's ice vine howled and glared at Lu Ming and the beautiful woman with its furious eyes. The 9 vines danced and rushed toward Lu Ming and the beautiful woman. Good, I can make it. At this moment, Lu Ming heaved a long sigh of relief. He suddenly let go of the beautiful woman and retreated quickly. Boom! Lu Ming had just retreated when a powerful aura burst out from the beautiful woman. Lu Ming had finally absorbed the last bit of cold air in the beautiful woman's body. Once the cold air was absorbed, the beautiful woman's powerful cultivation burst out in full force. That was why Lu Ming had retreated in a hurry. Who knew if the absolute beauty would kill him after she recovered? The absolute Bowtie's eyes were cold as she swept a glance at Lu Ming. In the end, her figure flashed and she charged at the Myriad River's ice vine. Die! The absolute beauty shouted and sword light burst out one after another, aiming for the Myriad River ice vine's head. Because of the subcore, the Myriad River's ice vine's strength was not as strong as before. Just now, it was injured by the snow lion's self-explosion, so its strength had weakened a lot. In this way, it was no match for the beautiful woman at all. As for the absolute beauty, all she had to do was to pay attention to the white light beam that the other party shot out. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sword lights attacked the Myriad River ice vine like a tide. Some of the sword lights pushed the opponent's vines away, while the rest of the sword lights hit the head of the Myriad River's ice vine, leaving sword wounds on its head. Roar! The Myriad River's ice vine roared madly. It had no spiritual intelligence. Its head glowed and another beam of light flew out from the gem. However, this time, the absolute beauty was already on guard. She was far enough away, and her figure flashed, avoiding the light beam. Slash, die! The beautiful woman shouted as she held her sword with both hands. A terrifying sword light shot into the sky. Then, the sword light slashed at the Myriad River ice vine. The sword light was too powerful. It was the all-out attack of the absolute beauty. It directly swept away the 9 vines and slashed at the head of the Myriad River's ice vine. Pfft! The Myriad River's ice vine's head was instantly split in half. With this, the Myriad River's ice vine had completely fallen. Its huge corpse fell heavily to the ground. After killing the Myriad River's ice vine, the absolute beauty turned around and looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body tensed up and he was ready for a big battle. You saved my life this time, so I'll spare you this time. Next time we meet, I won't let you go. Remember, the one who killed you, Lan Ling. After leaving behind these cold words, the absolute beauty turned into a sword light and rushed into the passage, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Who? After the beautiful woman left, Lu Ming secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the absolute beauty still had some conscience and didn't continue to kill him. Otherwise, he would have to prepare to escape again. Lan Ling, is that her name? Lu Ming muttered. He then shook his head and smiled bitterly. He had mixed feelings. No one would be able to remain calm when a beautiful woman appeared out of nowhere and said that she wanted to marry him. I have to improve my strength as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll be hunted down by this crazy woman again the next time I see her. Lu Ming underestimated it and walked towards the Myriad River's ice vine. The Myriad River's ice vine's head had been split in half by the blue spirit sword. Its subcore had also been shattered by the destructive sword Qi. It couldn't be more dead. Fortunately, the chilling gem is fine. Lu Ming looked at the gem on the head of the Myriad River's ice vine. It was still intact. Fortunately, the angle of Lan Ling's attack was slightly off. Otherwise, if the gemstone was shattered, Lu Ming would vomit blood. In a flash, he appeared on the Myriad River's ice vine's head. Lu Ming took out a combat sword and removed the glacial gem from the Myriad River's ice vine's head. Refining the rattan. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. The gem was extremely cold, and it emanated a terrifying cold air. The quality of this gem is definitely not inferior to the Ice Jade Cold Heart of the Ice Soul clan. Lu Ming muttered. Kid, with this extreme cold gem, I can neutralize a portion of the energy in the star core. I can quickly refine a portion of the energy. The quantity formula said. Alright, then you can absorb it. Lu Ming said. Following that, Lu Ming's glabella glowed and the measure formula flew out. It shone at the utmost cold gem and the gem disappeared, being absorbed by the measure formula. After the quantity formula was absorbed, it flew back to Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. It quieted down and began to refine the energy. Lu Ming sized him up. First, his gaze fell on the 9 vines of the Myriad River ice vine. The Myriad River's ice vine was born naturally. It could be said that its entire body was a treasure. Lu Ming was especially envious of the 9 vines. He had witnessed the power of the 9 vines in the previous battle. Not only were they extremely tough, but they were also filled with a terrifying chill. If the 9 vines were to be refined into the ice shackles, wouldn't the power of the ice shackles increase greatly? The power of the ice shackles was not bad, but it also had a weakness, and that was its fragility. Against cultivators of the same level, or even 1, 2, or 3 levels higher, it was still effective. However, the enemies that Lu Ming was facing were usually 4 to 5 levels higher than him, or even more. The ice chains were easily broken. However, if he refined this kind of rattan, the weakness of the ice shackles would disappear, and its power would definitely increase. He did as he said. However, there was a problem that gave Lu Ming a headache. How could he cut the rattan? Lu Ming walked around the corpse of the Myriad River's ice vine and his eyes lit up. He took out a combat sword and started slashing at the place where the vine and the root of the head were connected. The Myriad River's ice vine's head was not that hard. Very soon, Lu Ming removed one of the vines. It's so heavy. Lu Ming grabbed the rattan and waved it slightly. As the rattan waved, it pierced through the air and made a terrifying whistling sound. It was extremely heavy and there was a cold air that drilled into Lu Ming's arm. Lu Ming was not shocked. Instead, he was happy. The more mysterious the vine was, the greater the benefits. Lu Ming immediately sat down cross-legged and with a thought, an ice chain flew out. This ice chain had been refined into a ball of cold liquid and it was the most powerful. Lu Ming had to first refine the rattan into this ice chain. And NBSP he used the ice chain's secret technique, and the ice chains wriggled and merged with the vines. Then, he started to refine them. Of course, this kind of rattan was extremely tough. It was not easy to refine it. Lu Ming spent half a month to completely refine the rattan and integrate it into the ice chains. With a thought, the ice chains danced like long snakes. Hoo hoo hoo. The ice chains whipped in the air, erupting with a terrifying whistling sound. Bang! The ice chain struck the ground, causing the ground to shake and gravel to fly everywhere. A ditch a few meters deep was created. What a powerful force! Lu Ming's eyes lit up. One had to know that the ground here had been eroded by the cold nether energy for many years and had long been extremely hard. However, a whip from the ice chain had caused great damage, while the ice chain itself was not affected at all. Then, Lu Ming took out a high-grade divine sword and slashed at the ice chains with all his might. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions, and the divine sword hummed and vibrated non-stop. However, there was not a single mark on the ice chains. Tough, it's too tough. It has completely inherited the characteristics of the Myriad River ice vine. Kid, that's a good idea. The Myriad River's ice vine was born naturally and has endless potential. It was far from reaching its peak before. So, as long as you refine its vines into your secret skill, the power of your secret skill will continue to improve as your cultivation improves. The quantity formula said. Old Liang, how's the refining of the energy going? Lu Ming looked delighted. Refining energy can't be done overnight, but I've already refined a portion of it. I can transfer it to you now. The quantity formula said. Let's wait for a while. I'll refine all the remaining vines first. Lu Ming said. Following that, Lu Ming continued to struggle. He cut off the remaining 8 vines and refined them into his ice chains. Lu Ming realized that the remaining ice chains were more difficult to fuse with the rattan. It also took a longer time. Just like that, Lu Ming spent a whole year to refine the remaining 8 vines and integrate them into the ice chains. With a single thought, the 9 ice chains danced in the air, making a terrifying whistling sound. With another thought, the 9 ice chains disappeared without a trace. He could use it freely. In this case, my combat strength has increased a little. Lu Ming smiled. Now, the 9 ice chains were extremely tough. They could be used to attack and defend. Ordinary people couldn't break them at all. This greatly increased Lu Ming's life-saving energy. Old Liang, now, transfer the refined energy to me. Lu Ming sent a voice transmission to the quantity formula. Now, it was time to improve his cultivation. Alright, pay attention. The sound of the quantity formula was heard. Following that, a wave of dense and pure energy emerged. Lu Ming sat cross-legged and began to absorb this energy to cultivate. This kind of energy was extremely pure. Lu Ming could easily refine it and transform it into his own divine power. In his dantian, the divine fire formed by the 5 types of divine-grade divine power continued to grow. Those 5 divine flames were originally equivalent to first-level heavenly deities. At this moment, they were rapidly approaching second-level heavenly deities. A few days later, the flames of the 5 divine flames suddenly skyrocketed, successfully charging to second-level celestial deity. The upgrade continued. 10 days later, the 5 divine flames assailed the third-level celestial deity realm again. This speed was extremely shocking. This meant that Lu Ming was constantly breaking through realms. If he were to cultivate normally, he would definitely need to spend a lot of time. A few hundred years would be considered little, and a few thousand years or even 10,000 years would be considered normal. This was the advantage of having the measure formula. The 5 divine flames were still rising, continuously approaching the 4th-level celestial deity realm. However, when it rose to the peak of the 3rd-level celestial deity realm, it no longer had any energy. The energy that emerged from the quantity formula had been completely refined. Is there any more? Lu Ming said to the quantity word formula with eager eyes. You should be satisfied to have so much energy in a year. The quantity formula said. Lu Ming was speechless. However, after thinking about it, he felt that he should be satisfied. If he didn't have the extreme cold gem, even if he used the quantity formula to refine the energy of a star's core, it would still take hundreds of years. Now, he could achieve it in a year. Lu Ming should be satisfied. Cultivation Base Breakthrough. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. However, there's still a lot of energy left in the freezing gem. It can also neutralize the energy of many star cores. Just wait. The quantity formula said. Lu Ming nodded and immediately started to cultivate. This underground space was very remote. It was already in the cold nether forbidden ground, so almost no one came here. Ever since Lan Ling left, no one else came to the place. Lu Ming was happy to be idle and he was focused on cultivating. When the quantity formula had not transferred energy to him, Lu Ming had been focused on comprehending the secret skill. When there was energy, Lu Ming would refine it. Every few months, the quantity formula would give him a stream of energy. Just like that, another 2 years passed. Lu Ming had been here for more than 3 years. In the past 3 years, Lu Ming's cultivation level had improved rapidly. In the beginning, the divine fire condensed from the 5 types of divine-grade divine energy had all been raised to the same level as the ruler's divine energy and inextinguishable sword force. Then, the 9 types of divine energy broke through together. Just a few days ago, Lu Ming had successfully broken through to 5th-tier celestial god. The 9 types of divine energy in his body had all broken through to the 5th-level celestial deity realm. This caused Lu Ming's combat strength to skyrocket. With my current combat strength, it shouldn't be difficult for me to deal with the white-haired young man. Lu Ming muttered, secretly estimating his ability. The white-haired young man was a half-step divine king and his divine power was about 60 to 70% awakened. 3 years ago, Lu Ming was definitely not this person's match. However, Lu Ming was confident that he could defeat this person now. Lu Ming estimated that his current ability should be equivalent to a half-step divine king. The degree of awakening of his divine power was about 80 to 90% of the geniuses. The comparison of strength here referred to the geniuses who controlled divine-grade divine power. Without divine-grade divine power, there was no such thing as awakening divine power. However, Lu Ming was probably no match for the powerful indigo spirit. My attack-type divine skill is still at the 7th level. If I can break through to the 8th level, it'll be even stronger. Lu Ming pondered. However, such strength was already considered to be at the top among the Heaven's Pride experts who had entered Star Moon Ancient City. After all, there were only a few top talents who had awakened the origin divine power factor. Unfortunately, the energy of the chilling gem has been used up. Otherwise, I could continue to try. Lu Ming muttered and shook his head. He knew that he was being greedy. This time, not only had his other 5 types of divine-grade divine power increased, but his cultivation had also broken through 1 level. This was already a great harvest. One had to know that he had broken through with 9 types of divine power at the same time. The amount of energy required was too terrifying. If he only cultivated 1 type of energy, he would definitely rise by more than 1 level. I've already wasted more than 3 years. It's time for me to go out and take a walk. It's not easy for me to come to Star Moon Ancient City. I can't waste my time like this. Lu Ming smiled and left the place. Not long after, Lu Ming reached the surface and flew out of the land of the cold nether. Very few people came to the cold nether forbidden ground. Lu Ming flew all the way and did not meet a single person. Not long after, Lu Ming left the range of the cold nether forbidden ground. After leaving the cold nether forbidden grounds, Lu Ming took out a map and looked at it. This map was naturally the map given to him by Wuxia. Very soon, Lu Ming locked onto the location. Myriad God Cliff. On the map, there was a big circle, and the place was marked in big black characters. This was an important place in Star Moon Ancient City. Previously, Wuxia and the rest had mentioned that Lu Ming could cultivate at Myriad God Cliff when he was free. This was because this place could help people awaken the origin divine power factor. It was said that many people had awakened the origin divine power factor at Myriad God Cliff in the past. Or perhaps, some people had returned to the universal camp after cultivating at Myriad God Cliff and awakened their origin genes. This was a place that they had to go to once they entered Star Moon Ancient City. A few years ago, if Lu Ming had not been looking for supreme cold treasures to improve his strength, he would have gone there long ago. However, it was not too late to go now. Lu Ming followed the directions on the map and headed towards Myriad God Cliff. 2 days later, Lu Ming arrived at Myriad God Cliff. Myriad God Cliff was a cliff. However, this cliff was very magnificent. It was hundreds of thousands of feet high and there were many statues carved on the cliff. The statues were of different sizes, and they were carved with different gods. Some were ferocious, some were majestic, and some were terrifying. At a glance, there really were no less than 10,000. It was said that these statues were all carvings of primitive gods. And in the air outside Myriad God Cliff, there were stone platforms floating in the air. These stone platforms were extremely huge. Each one was 10 miles in length and width. From high to low, from far to near, they were like steps floating in the air. On each of these stone platforms, there was a figure sitting cross-legged. On each stone platform, there was only one figure. There were also many figures standing in the void outside the stone platform, watching from afar. Lu Ming flew over. Many people glanced at him and ignored him. Although Lu Ming had passed through the sky gate and many people knew him, his cultivation level was very low. These people did not take it to heart. Lu Ming did not mind and looked forward. There was a person sitting cross-legged on each of the stone platforms, and a layer of light enveloped each person. "Brother, why is there only one person on each stone platform? Can't the others go up?" Lu Ming asked a young man who looked simple and honest. "You just got here, right?" The honest-looking young man glanced at him. "Yes, yes," Lu Ming said with a smile. It said that this stone platform was used by ancient deities during the early stages of the Heavenly Palace to observe the Myriad God Cliff's cultivation. Ancient deities were all extremely huge, which is why this stone platform is so big. And each stone platform can only accommodate one person at a time. If there are too many people, they will be bounced off. The honest-looking young man explained. "I see." Lu Ming came to a realization. No wonder there was only one person on each stone platform. Now that the stone platform has been occupied by them, won't we have no chance? Lu Ming asked again. "Of course there's a chance, but everything must be fought for with strength," the honest-looking young man said. "Fight for it with your own strength? What do you mean?" Lu Ming asked. This stone platform was set up with a powerful restriction in the early days of the Heavenly Palace era. It operates according to a certain rule. If a person practices on a stone platform, the formation of the stone platform will protect him. The honest-looking young man explained. Lu Ming nodded. There was a layer of light on the people on the stone platform. It was the power of the formation's protection. With the protection of the formation, you can cultivate in peace. Others can't attack you. However, this protection has a time limit. After 3 months, this protection will disappear. Of course, it will only disappear for a short period of time. It will only last for 1 day. After 1 day, the protective power of the formation will appear again. Therefore, today is the day to fight for the stone platform. The honest-looking young man said. Chapter 3014 Settling Accounts. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. After hearing the honest young man's explanation, Lu Ming roughly understood the rules of cultivation here. When one cultivated on each stone platform, they would be protected by a large formation for 3 months. After 3 months, the protection of the formation would disappear for a day. On this day, the others could compete for the stone platform. Whoever defeated the person on the stone platform could replace the other party and cultivate on the stone platform for 3 months. In other words, on the stone platform, one had to accept a challenge every 3 months. If one could defeat the challenger, they could continue to cultivate. On this stone platform, the higher you go and the closer you are to Myriad God Cliff, the better the effects of cultivation. Therefore, you can also challenge those who go up. However, the higher you are on the stone platform, the more powerful you are. Ordinary people are no match for you. The honest-looking young man explained. Lu Ming nodded, his gaze landing on the stone platform at the top. There were 3 stone platforms at the very top and the one closest to Myriad God Cliff. 3 figures were sitting cross-legged on them. It's him. Lu Ming recognized one of them. He was one of the 4 top geniuses who had passed the Heaven's Gate. He was a half-step divine king who had awakened the divine power source. Although the other 2 had not awakened the origin divine power factor, their abilities were probably also extremely shocking. Following that, Lu Ming's gaze moved downwards. He discovered that there were a total of 108 stone platforms. Some of the stone platforms even had people Lu Ming was familiar with. People from the Qin clan and the Jin clan. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with coldness. On a few stone platforms sat people from the Qin clan. These people were the ones who had wanted to surround and kill Lu Ming. In addition, there were also acquaintances in the Jin family. Jin Xing was one of them. Everyone's here, hee. Lu Ming sneered, his voice cold. By the way, brother, how long can each of us cultivate up there? Lu Ming asked again. Everyone can cultivate for 3 years. After 3 years, you can't go up, unless you wait for the next time you come in. The honest-looking young man explained. Lu Ming nodded. It was no wonder that a few of the top talents were not around. Logically speaking, those talents would not miss such a place. It seemed that some of them had already cultivated for 3 years. Perhaps some of them were not in a hurry. After all, they could stay in Star Moon Ancient City for 10 years. Everyone stood in the air and waited quietly. Many of them were ready for a big battle at any time. There were more wolves than meat. There were only 108 stone platforms in total, but there were thousands of people here. Even if each person could only cultivate for 3 years, many people could not go up there to cultivate. If they wanted to go up there to cultivate, they could only compete with their strength. Very quickly, a day had passed. Someone's 3-month deadline is coming up. Suddenly, someone spoke, his eyes shining. Many people's gazes fell on a young man with a scale between his brows in the bottommost row. People from the Qin family, what a coincidence. I want this seat. Lu Ming muttered. At this moment, the light barrier around the Qin clan's heavens chosen suddenly began to glow. When the light reached its limit, it quickly dimmed. Then, the heavens chosen opened his eyes. At the same time, at least 100 figures rushed out towards the stone platform. I want this stone platform. Who do you think you are? Get lost. This challenge is mine. It's mine. Angry roars rang out one after another, and then a brilliant divine light filled the air. Hundreds of people fought fiercely in the air. Everyone wanted to step onto the stone platform and obtain the right to challenge. Whoever stepped onto the stone platform first would have the right to challenge. Boom! 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 In the void, there were constant rumbles and terrifying explosions. All kinds of divine light and attacks were constantly colliding. However, the young men who were cultivating on the stone platform didn't seem to feel anything. It was obvious that the light shield formed by the formation protected them and even isolated them from the outside world. This way, they could cultivate in peace and not be disturbed by the outside world. A total of more than 100 Heaven's favorites were fighting intensely. For a moment, no one could step onto the stone platform. This was because whoever approached the stone platform would be attacked by the others. Ah! A Heaven's Pride expert let out a blood-curdling screech. He wanted to rush up the stone platform, but he was attacked by the others. Dozens of divine lights drowned that Heaven's Pride expert. After the blood-curdling screech, that Heaven's Pride expert vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind. The killing continued. People were constantly injured, and people were retreating. The remaining people didn't make a move, because some of them knew their own limitations. They knew that they weren't strong enough and wouldn't be able to compete even if they went up. I want this stone platform. At this moment, the corners of Lu Ming's mouth curled into a faint smile. His figure suddenly moved and he dashed toward the stone platform like a bolt of lightning. His speed was astonishing as he rapidly approached the stone platform. However, the others had also noticed Lu Ming. You're looking for death. Get lost. Many people made their moves. In an instant, dozens of divine lights shot toward Lu Ming. The Kuan Peng of the ninth heaven, Kuan Peng. Lu Ming shouted in a low voice and used the 9 heavenly Kuan Peng technique. His divine power condensed into a Kuan Peng. With a flap of its wings, his figure suddenly accelerated and dodged the attacks. In the next moment, he landed on the stone platform. So fast. Many people's hearts trembled. They actually didn't have the time to make a move just now. After that, many people sighed. It seemed that they wouldn't have a share of this stone platform. Once someone stepped onto the stone platform, the others would no longer be able to compete. Seeing that Lu Ming had stepped onto the stone platform, the battle in the air stopped and everyone's eyes fell on Lu Ming. Stepping onto the stone platform was only the first step. In order to obtain the right to cultivate on the stone platform, one had to defeat the person who had cultivated before. Unless the other party voluntarily withdrew after the 3 years were up. Lu Ming, it's you. The Qin clan's paragon looked at Lu Ming with a cold gaze. Of course it's me. It's time to settle the score with you all for besieging me that day. Lu Ming said coldly. Settle accounts? Hee, just you? The Qin clan's paragon sneered as a powerful aura emanated from his body. 9th level celestial deity. The cultivation of this Qin clan's Heaven's Pride expert was at the 9th level of the heavenly deity realm. Furthermore, this time, he had already cultivated on this stone platform for half a year. The degree of his divine power awakening had increased by a lot and had already reached 50%. Lu Ming wanted to settle scores with him. You're looking for death. Boom. Lu Ming could not be bothered to waste his breath on him. He took a step forward and a huge aura rose. All the divine power in his body exploded. The divine power on the surface of his body jumped and burned like flames. After that, the battle formula was activated. However, Lu Ming did not use his ancient god body. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, he did not need the ancient god body to deal with a 9th-tier celestial god with a 50% awakened divine power. A terrifying aura rushed toward the other party like an avalanche. The other party's pupils suddenly widened and he exclaimed, "Your aura! How is this possible?" The Qin family's youth was frightened. How could a fifth-level celestial deity have such a terrifying aura? Primitive God, please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron. Divine energy surged from Lu Ming's body and formed a shock wave that spread in all directions. The power of the aura not only shocked the Qin family's paragon, but also the other people around him. Such an aura was simply stronger than the 9th-level heavenly deity Qin clan's prodigy. Ice chains. Lu Ming muttered and 9 ice chains rushed out from his body. 7 injury divine fist. At this moment, the Qin clan's heaven's favorite finally reacted. With an angry roar, his body glowed and he punched out. A huge fist print, as big as a mountain, came crashing down on Lu Ming. Bang! 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 And NBSP-3 of the ice chains struck the fist seal, causing it to shake and explode, but the ice chains were completely fine. After refining the 9 vines of the Myriad River's ice vine, the ice chains became extremely tough. It was impossible for the other party to break them. The other 6 ice chains flew forward and continued to attack the Qin clan's paragon. The Qin clan's paragon's expression changed drastically. He unleashed all of his strength and even injured himself. He spat out blood and increased the power of his 7 injury divine fist. Boom! Boom! He threw a few more punches in an attempt to break the ice chains. However, after the ice chains collided with the fist seal, they only flicked slightly and changed directions. Then, they continued to attack the Qin clan's heaven's pride expert. Pfft! A few ice chains pierced through the defense of the Qin clan's heaven's favorite and wrapped around him. A terrifying coldness spread out. A layer of ice immediately appeared on the body of the Qin clan's heaven's chosen, making him unable to move at all. Spare me, the Qin clan's heaven's pride expert was scared to death as he roared. Outside of the stone platform, the others were also dumbfounded. It's over? It had only been a few moves, and the Qin clan's prodigy was already defeated. Wasn't he defeated too quickly? What a powerful secret skill. Lu Ming's secret skill is so powerful. I didn't expect that his strength is actually so shocking. Just a 5th-level celestial deity, no wonder he can pass through the heavenly gate. Many people sighed. You wanted to kill me before. Is it possible for you to beg for mercy now? Lu Ming's indifferent voice was heard. With a single thought, an ice chain was like a sharp spear, piercing towards the other party's eyebrows. Pfft! The other party's glabella was pierced through, and after struggling for a moment, he died. Then, he swung the ice chain and threw the corpse out of the stone platform. After settling the Qin family's prodigy, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and waited for the day to pass. There was only one chance to challenge. If Lu Ming succeeded in his challenge, the others could not continue to challenge him. If they wanted to challenge him, they could only do so 3 months later. Soon, the day came. There was a light screen on the stone platform that enveloped Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming's vision turned black and he was completely plunged into darkness. Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, Lu Ming felt a terrifying roar coming from outside. The world shook violently. Lu Ming quickly opened his eyes and was shocked by the scene in front of him. In the universe, a group of giants were fighting. The so-called giants were simply too huge. Each giant stood in the universe and was astonishingly burly. Their fists were bigger than a planet. Ancient God, or primitive God spirit. Lu Ming's heart was beating violently. All of them were primitive gods. A group of primitive godly spirits were fighting fiercely. The universe was boiling, and the stars were falling like meteors. Some stars exploded like fireworks. This was the true destruction of the world. In such a great battle, it would not take long for a galaxy to be destroyed. Not good. Suddenly, Lu Ming's expression changed drastically. This was because he saw a ray of divine power rushing towards him. This divine power was filled with an ancient aura. After awakening the origin factor of divine power, it was somewhat similar to this aura, but there was a huge difference. This was the difference in essence. That was because this was the original divine power controlled by the original God. Lu Ming's heart was in his throat. His entire body was tense. He wanted to escape, but he realized that he could not. Am I going to die here? Lu Ming had a thought. That divine power was too terrifying. If he was hit, he would definitely not be left with even a bit of residue. Even a peak divine king or a figure above divine king would be killed instantly by such a divine power, let alone him. The speed of the divine power was too fast. Lu Ming had only had a few thoughts and the divine power had already struck him. However, Lu Ming did not feel anything at all. Lu Ming looked at himself and touched himself. He realized that he was fine. It was as if he was transparent. The divine power rushed through his body and struck a huge planet in the distance. The planet exploded with a boom. I'm fine. Are these all illusions? Lu Ming swallowed his saliva and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Following that, he carefully observed. Indeed, all of this was an illusion and not real. Perhaps it was a projection from countless years ago. Then, Lu Ming thought of the god statues on the Myriad god cliff. Perhaps, they were projected by the god statues. However, the fluctuation of divine power can be felt. Different primitive gods controlled different divine powers. Lu Ming observed carefully, his eyes bright. These primordial divine powers controlled different types of origin divine power. Many of the divine-grade divine powers now, if they were traced back to their roots, were most likely evolved from these origin divine powers. If he could find the origin divine power that had the same source as the divine-grade divine power he controlled and study it carefully, he would definitely gain a lot. No wonder it was said that this place had a great effect on one's comprehension of divine power, and one could even use it to awaken the origin divine power factor. I control 7 types of divine-grade divine power. Which one should I cultivate first? I'd better first train in hegemon level divine power. In the end, Lu Ming decided to cultivate the god's divine power first. The god's divine power was the divine-grade divine power that he had mastered the earliest. He had the deepest understanding of it and it would definitely be easier to cultivate it. But first, he had to find a primordial god that controlled the original divine power and had the same origin as the chief divine power. Let's go. Lu Ming tried to move. With a single thought, his body flew out at an unimaginable speed. Around him, huge gods were fighting fiercely. However, Lu Ming was not affected at all. He was pierced through. That is the origin Shen power of the Sun Shen power. Lu Ming saw a primordial divine power radiating with light all over its body. It was more resplendent than a star. When it went crazy, it grabbed a star as a weapon and threw it at its enemy. It was extremely powerful. This primordial godly spirit controlled origin Shen power, which was similar to the Sun Shen power. Lu Ming happened to be in control of the Sun Shen power. Let's first find the origin divine power of a ruler's divine power. Lu Ming suppressed his excitement and continued to search. Chasing away the gold punishment. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron. Lu Ming continued to search. Not long after, he finally made a discovery. A primitive godly spirit was covered in a purple gold light, and its appearance could not be seen clearly. However, the strange thing was that the body of this primitive god was not very big. It was only about 100 meters tall. Compared to the other primitive gods that were usually bigger than planets, it was like a speck of dust. However, the aura it emitted was not weak at all. In fact, it was even stronger. It punched out, and the power of its fist could penetrate several planets in a row, forcing a primitive god to retreat. How terrifying! This is the origin divine power of a ruler's divine power. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He stood not far away, observing and comprehending in detail. To be able to see the original godly spirit use its original godly power at such a close distance was very touching to him. What an exquisite divine power, what a terrifying divine power. I had thought that divine-grade divine power was the strongest divine power, but compared to this origin divine power, it's just trash. No, it's even worse than trash. Lu Ming was shocked. It was like a dried-up sponge, absorbing the nutrients crazily. Lu Ming completely forgot about the time and was immersed in the understanding of the ruler's divine power. And NBSP originally, he didn't have a deep understanding of God-level divine power. He hadn't even awakened 10% of it, perhaps only 1 or 2%. He was still thousands of miles away from truly awakening it. But now, the degree of his awakening was rapidly increasing. Degree of awakening, 2%, 3%, 4%. After an unknown period of time, his awakening had reached 20%. The speed of his improvement was shocking. Lu Ming felt that his use of the ruler's divine power had improved. Of course, the lower the degree of awakening, the easier it would be to awaken. The higher the degree of awakening, the harder and slower it would be to improve. At this moment, Lu Ming felt a force acting on his body. His vision turned black again. The next moment, there was a flash of light. He opened his eyes and found that he was still sitting cross-legged on the stone platform. Lu Ming knew that the 3-month period was up. The light shield on Lu Ming's body disappeared. Lu Ming stood up and swept his gaze across the entire venue, waiting for other people to challenge him. However, for a moment, no one dared to rush forward. 3 months ago, Lu Ming's display of strength was truly shocking. A 9th-tier celestial deity was killed by Lu Ming in a few moves. Without confidence, how could he have rushed to challenge Lu Ming? Lu Ming is too powerful. I'm not his match at all. I'd better wait for the others' stone platforms. That's right. There are a total of 108 stone platforms. On average, it takes less than a day for someone's time to expire. Let's wait a little longer. Some people were discussing. Lu Ming waited for a long time but no one challenged him. It seems that no one will challenge me. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. However, he did not sit cross-legged. He looked at the stone platform above him. The higher one went, the closer one was to the stone platform in Myriad God Cliff, and the better the effect. Lu Ming was no longer satisfied with the current stone platform. He wanted to choose a stone platform with a better effect for cultivation. After all, everyone could only cultivate for 3 years and he could not waste time. Don't tell me that Lu Ming also wants the stone platform above? After everyone saw Lu Ming's status, they started to make guesses. At the same time, many people's eyes flickered. If Lu Ming left the current stone platform, it would be ownerless and they could fight for it. At this moment, someone on the stone platform above Lu Ming emitted a glow. The time was almost up. What a coincidence. Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. This person was actually Jin Xing. Lu Ming was initially considering whether he should wait for Jin Xing's time to run out and chase him off the stone platform. He did not expect that his time was up already. What else could it be if not a coincidence? Jin Xing opened his eyes and looked around. Buzz! At this moment, Lu Ming moved. His speed was shockingly fast. In a flash, he appeared on Jin Xing's stone platform. Lu Ming. At the sight of Lu Ming, Jin Xing's expression changed drastically. Kill. Lu Ming took a step forward and made his move. The ice chains flew out and wrapped around Jin Xing. However, the moment Lu Ming made his move, Jin Xing also moved. He turned into a golden light and rushed out of the stone platform. Jin Xing was indeed one of the 4 heroes of the Jin family. He was very decisive. The moment he saw Lu Ming, he knew that he was no match for him. Without any hesitation, he rushed out of the stone platform. In this way, when Lu Ming's attack arrived, his figure had already left. In an instant, he had rushed out of the stone platform. This guy runs quite fast. Lu Ming muttered. Lu Ming, I won't let this go. Jin Xing stood in the crowd, his eyes cold. Charge! That stone platform is mine. At this moment, many people finally reacted and rushed to the stone platform where Lu Ming was previously. A chaotic battle had begun. After a chaotic battle, the stone platform was finally occupied by a 9th-level celestial deity. As for Lu Ming, he had defeated Jin Xing in a challenge. Naturally, no one could challenge him. Let's see the effects of this stone platform first. Lu Ming sat cross-legged and waited quietly. A day later, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. His vision went dark again. The next moment, he came to another universe and saw a group of primitive gods fighting. This time, Lu Ming quickly found the origin divine energy of the ruler's divine power and began to study it. As expected, the effects of the stone platform above were different. His comprehension was much clearer. Lu Ming's degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power increased at an even faster speed. The further he progressed, the more difficult it was to improve. However, the effect here was better. Lu Ming's improvement speed was faster. After 3 months, his awakening had reached about 45%. Can other people improve so quickly? Lu Ming could not help but think this way. At this rate, he would be able to reach 80% or 90% in no time. Did the others improve so quickly? From his previous observations, he didn't think so. I'm indeed a cultivation genius. Lu Ming gave a very narcissistic smile. Then, he stood up and waited for others to challenge him. Many people hesitated. For a moment, no one dared to fight Lu Ming. I'm going to fight. Finally, someone could not help but rush up to the stone platform and stand opposite Lu Ming. Lu Ming, let's have a fight. It's just a sparring session. Let's not fight to the death. How about it? The young man said. He was not confident in facing Lu Ming. That was why he said that. Sure. Lu Ming smiled faintly. He had no enmity with this person, so there was no need to fight to the death. Boom! The young man's aura exploded, and his divine power burned. The young man's cultivation base was extremely close to the half-step divine king realm. Challenging the second row. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. The young man who challenged Lu Ming had a cultivation base that was infinitely close to the half-step divine king realm. His aura was surging and shocking. Lu Ming, take my strongest move. The young man roared. A battle axe appeared in his hand. The battle axe rapidly grew in size and became 10,000 meters wide. Slash! The young man roared. He became one with his axe and attacked with all his might, slashing at Lu Ming. In an instant, Lu Ming activated the fourfold combat power of the battle character formula. 9 ice chains flew out and enveloped Lu Ming, wrapping him tightly. Boom! The battle axe hit the ice chain's defense and exploded with a loud bang. The force spread in all directions, and the shock waves spread in all directions. The ice chain shook a few times and then was fine. Lu Ming did not move at all. On the other hand, the young man's body was pushed back by the force of the rebound. He landed on the stone platform and was pushed back dozens of steps. Impressive. I'm not your match. Goodbye. The young man cupped his fists and left the stone platform. He had already used his strongest move and knew that he was no match for Lu Ming. He might as well admit defeat and leave. Lu Ming was not bothered by it. After a faint smile, he shifted his gaze to the stone platform further up. He had already experienced the stone platforms here. Although the cultivation speed was not bad, there were better ones. Why not choose the better one? Lu Ming's gaze swept across the first and second rows. They were his target. In the first row, there was a top genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. Lu Ming was not his match yet, so he naturally would not challenge him. As for the other two people, Lu Ming estimated that they were very close to awakening the original divine power factor. Their degree of awakening was estimated to be more than 90%. Lu Ming was not confident in dealing with them. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the second row. Lu Ming planned to challenge the second row first. He would challenge the geniuses in the first row after he had awakened more divine power. Lu Ming waited quietly. In the second row, Lu Ming saw people from the Qin and Jin families. The two clans each had a heaven's favorite in the second row. You too. Lu Ming planned to challenge the Qin and Jin families' paragons when their time was up. They would challenge whoever arrived first. Not long after, someone in the third row had reached their time limit. Lu Ming's eyes flickered, but he did not make a move. Lu Ming isn't making a move. Is he waiting for the second or first row? Someone guessed in surprise. Wait for the second and first row? No way. Lu Ming was that powerful? The first three rows are all half-step Divine King Heaven's favorites with high levels of divine power awakening. Look at the Heaven's favorite in the third row. He's not challenging him and he's just standing there without cultivating. He must want to challenge the person above. Many people were discussing. However, no one went up to challenge the genius in the third row. That genius was very strong and there were no half-step Divine Kings. Normally, half-step Divine Kings could get a spot without any pressure. Only those below the half-step Divine King realm would compete for it. After waiting for a day, no one accepted the challenge. The young man continued to cultivate. As for Lu Ming, he stood on the stone platform and continued to wait. His body was covered in a layer of light. He had a lot of freedom to cultivate here. Even if the day was up, he could choose not to cultivate. Take Lu Ming for example. A day had passed. As long as he did not enter the cultivation state, he would not enter the universe to cultivate. It would only be a waste of time to waste time. Lu Ming waited for another 2 days. On this day, there was finally some movement on the second row of stone platforms. A young man in a golden robe was emitting light. Have we finally arrived? Lu Ming muttered as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. This golden-robed young man was truly a genius of the Jin family. The young man from the Jin family opened his eyes, but he still sat there quietly without any intention of getting up. He didn't think anyone would dare to challenge him. However, in the next moment, his eyes narrowed. Someone had appeared on his stone platform. Lu Ming. Lu Ming rushed to his stone platform at the first moment. It's you, Lu Ming. You want to challenge me? The paragon of the Jin family was stunned when he saw Lu Ming. He was clearly surprised. Can't I? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Of course you can. If you want to die, it'll naturally fulfill your wish. The young man from Jin family laughed. Jin Ju, you have to underestimate him. He killed Qin Mu with a few moves earlier. At this moment, Jin Xing's voice came. Jin Xing, who had been watching from afar, reminded him. He killed Qin Mu, what? Jin Ju was slightly taken aback. It seems like your strength has exceeded my expectations. Even though he said that, Jin Ju was still very confident. Qin Mu was only a 9th-level heavenly god. On the other hand, Jin Ju was a half-step divine king. Furthermore, the degree of his divine powers awakening had already reached about 60%. His abilities were far from what Qin Mu could compare to. While the two of them were conversing, the others had already started to fight for the stone platform that Lu Ming had used earlier. Lu Ming and Jin Ju did not make a move. They were waiting for the others to decide the outcome before making a move. Not long after, Lu Ming's stone platform was occupied by a young man. Now, it's your turn. Jin Ju looked at Lu Ming and sneered. Golden light emanated from his body. The golden radiance was extremely dense, like a golden armor that enveloped him. Bang! Jin Ju took a step forward and his palm turned pure gold. A golden combat sword appeared in his hand and he slashed it at Lu Ming. Roar! Ancient God! Lu Ming roared. His body swelled up and turned into an ancient god. Lu Ming had no choice but to use his ancient god body against a half-step divine king. Otherwise, he would not be a match for his opponent in his normal form. However, Lu Ming held back. After he used the ancient god body, his battle character formula only doubled his combat power. As long as it was enough. Break the air, Lu Ming thrust his spear forward. The spear's gleam collided with the opponent's golden sword radiance, creating a terrifying shock wave. Thump! After Lu Ming launched his first attack, he took a step forward and continued to attack. He brandished his spear and launched a storm-like attack. Void-breaking sword. Jin Ju let out a long roar, and golden divine light surged as he slashed out golden sword marks. This sword mark was truly terrifying. It was incomparably sharp and seemed to be able to cut through everything. Clang! Clang! In the blink of an eye, the two sides had exchanged dozens of moves. The Jin family's space-breaking secret technique is indeed powerful. Even Lu Ming could not help but sigh at the power of the Jin family's secret technique. The Jin family was ranked high among all the families in the 9 absolute heavenly king mansion. It was not just talk, but they had fought their way to the top with their strength. Ice chains. In the middle of the battle, Lu Ming had a thought and 9 ice chains flew out. Don't want it? I do. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron. The 9 ice chains wrapped around Jin Ju, exuding a shocking coldness. Break, break! Jin Ju shouted as he slashed at the ice chains with his void-breaking sword, trying to break them. However, a series of metal clanging sounds rang out and sparks flew in all directions. The ice chains were completely undamaged, but they were sent flying by the powerful force. However, after the ice chain flew out, it turned and continued to attack Jin Ju. So tough? How is this possible? Jin Ju's expression changed drastically, and he was in disbelief. The ice chains were only condensed by Lu Ming using a secret skill and were not any divine weapon. He had not expected that the void-splitting sword could not cut it. Wang! At this moment, Lu Ming himself had also charged forward. He swung his long spear down and a crescent-shaped spear radiance slashed down at Jin Ju. Jin Ju hurriedly blocked. Although he blocked Lu Ming's attack, the ice chains came at him again. Clang! 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 He waved his sword and continuously slashed at the ice chains, shaking them away. However, the shocking chill of the ice chains crawled up Jin Ju's body through his sword. The 9th ice chain, in particular, had an even more astonishing chill. Under the stimulation of the divine power of the moon, its power became more and more terrifying. The layer of golden light on Jin Ju's body was covered in a layer of frost. His movements also became stiff, and his strength was greatly affected. Kill! Lu Ming let out a long howl and seized the opportunity to launch a storm of attacks, beginning to suppress Jin Ju in all aspects. In fact, if Lu Ming went all out, he could easily crush Jin Ju. However, Lu Ming felt that there might be a big battle later on, so it was better to keep some trump cards. Bang! After a few more moves, Jin Ju was swept by Lu Ming's spear gleam. The protective divine power that covered his body shattered, and his body flew out horizontally, spitting out a large mouthful of blood. Damn it, brat, I'll settle this score another day. Jin Ju roared and was about to rush out of the stone platform. Another day? You still want another day? You're really naive. Lu Ming's cold voice was heard. The 9 ice chains grew longer rapidly and danced in the sky like an inescapable net, blocking Jin Ju's retreat. Boom! Jin Ju's attack landed on the ice chain, but the ice chain only trembled. Jin Ju's body was blocked. Lu Ming, what do you want to do? Don't tell me you want to kill me. Do you dare? Jin Ju roared. He was a top-notch Heaven's Pride expert of the Jin clan. The Jin clan was one of the top aristocratic families in the 9 absolute heavenly king manor. Lu Ming, a mere piece of trash from the Qin Heaven Starfield, dared to kill him? Hee hee. Lu Ming's reply was a cold sneer. Then, Lu Ming took a step forward and the spear's gleam was as heavy as a mountain, pressing down on Jin Ju. Bang! With one side losing and the other gaining, Jin Ju was even less of a match for Lu Ming. He was sent flying by one move and crashed into the ice chains. He was severely injured and kept spitting out blood. Whoosh! The ice chains seized the opportunity to bind Jin Ju. Let me go. Lu Ming, I order you to let me go. Jin Ju roared. Order me? You're just a prisoner, and you're ordering me around? Are you out of your mind? Lu Ming was so angry that he laughed. He waved the ice chain and smashed Jin Xing to the ground. Instantly, Jin Ju was smashed into a dead dog. Lu Ming, you'd better let him go. Otherwise, the Jin family will not let you off. You should know the power of the Jin family in the 9 absolute heavenly king mansion. Outside the arena, Jin Xing shouted and threatened Lu Ming. Brat, let me go. I don't believe you dare to kill me. Jin Ju also roared. At this point, he still did not believe that Lu Ming would dare to kill him, especially in front of so many people. What an idiot, I'll send you on your way. Lu Ming sighed. Then, an icy cold killing intent filled the air. Enveloped by this killing intent, Jin Ju shivered. At this moment, he felt a chill in his heart and his eyes revealed fear. He had a feeling that Lu Ming would really kill him. Lu Ming really dared to. No, don't, Jin Ju shouted in fear. He was finally scared. You don't want it? I want it, let's go, Lu Ming said calmly. He thrust his spear forward and pierced through the space between Jin Ju's eyebrows. Jin Ju twitched and stopped breathing. He was killed by Lu Ming on the spot. Lu Ming, outside the arena, Jin Xing roared with anger. He did not expect that Lu Ming would dare to kill the top talent of the Jin family. Was he not afraid of the Jin family's revenge? I'll kill whoever wants to kill me, who cares who they are? Lu Ming said coldly. He had experienced so much along the way that he had long understood one thing. When dealing with enemies, one must be ruthless. If there was a chance to kill, one must kill. Because your enemy will not stop just because you let him go. On the contrary, they will take revenge even more. Even if he didn't kill Jin Ju, the Jin clan wouldn't let him go. Since that was the case, why not kill him? Jin Xing shut up. He knew that Lu Ming was a ruthless character. Threats would not have an effect on him. Lu Ming, just you wait, Jin Xing roared in his heart, brewing a vicious plan. After killing Jin Ju, Lu Ming kept his storage ring and waited quietly. A day later, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. He sat cross-legged and entered the starry sky of the universe. The effects of the second row of stone platforms were extraordinary. Lu Ming's cultivation speed was very fast. His degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power was also rapidly increasing. 50%, 55%. Looking at Lu Ming sitting cross-legged on the stone platform, Jin Xing's eyes were filled with ferocious killing intent. He could not wait to cut Lu Ming into 8 pieces. Unfortunately, Lu Ming had the protection of the array. He could only dream about it. This guy killed Qin Mu. After a period of time, one of the Qin clan's heaven's favorites ended his cultivation. He had already been cultivating on the stone platform for 3 years. He couldn't continue cultivating, so he left the stone platform. Jin Xing told him the news as soon as he left the stone platform. That's right. Not only did this person kill Qin Mu, but he also killed the proud son of heaven of my Jin clan, Jin Ju. Jin Xing gritted his teeth and said. What? He even killed Jin Ju. Is he that strong? The Qin clan's paragon was also shocked. This kid is a monster. He must be eliminated. Jin Xing gritted his teeth and said. Don't worry. Qin Wukong, the pride of the Qin family, is cultivating in the second row. The degree of his divine power awakening has long reached 90%. After this cultivation, I'm afraid it's very close to 100%. In addition, he has broken through to the 8th level with a few of his divine skills. It's enough to kill Lu Ming. The Qin clan's chosen said coldly. That's great. Jin Xing was also overjoyed. The person they were talking about was the genius of the Qin clan who was cultivating in the second row. Time flew by, and soon, 2 months had passed. At this moment, Qin Wukong, the Qin clan's prodigy, who was cultivating in the second row, woke up. Chapter 3019 Rapid Improvement. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. The Qin clan's proud son of heaven, Qin Wukong, had ended his cultivation and awakened. After he regained his senses, Qin Wukong stood up and looked at 2 of the young men in the first row. Now, my awakening of divine power has reached 99%. I can challenge the first row and use the power of the first row to completely awaken the origin divine power factor. Qin Wuxiang mumbled, his eyes brimming with confidence. Before, his Shen power had not awakened to such a high level, so he had not dared to challenge the first row. After a period of cultivation, he had full confidence. Of course, he did not dare to challenge the genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. He wanted to challenge the other 2 people. Cousin Wukong. At this time, the Qin clan's heaven's favorite in the crowd shouted. Is there something? Qin Wukong turned around and said. Qin Mu has been killed. The Qin clan's chosen said. Qin Mu was killed? Who was it? Which aristocratic family did it? Upon hearing these words, a cold killing intent erupted from Qin Wukong's body. His cold gaze swept across the surroundings. The expressions of those who were caught by his gaze changed and their hearts beat faster. Among the Heaven's Pride experts in the Universal Camp who were below the God King stage, Qin Wukong was definitely considered as one of the top experts. It's him, Lu Ming. It's Lu Ming who killed Qin Mu. The Qin clan's paragon pointed at Lu Ming, who was cultivating. Subconsciously, Qin Wukong's gaze shifted to Lu Ming. He could not help but be stunned. If he remembered correctly, this position belonged to Jin Ju. Why did it become Lu Ming's? Lu Ming, he can kill Qin Mu. Qin Wukong's deep voice sounded with some doubt. This kid is very powerful. You can't just look at his cultivation. Jin Ju, the pride of the Jin clan, was also killed by him. Jin Xing said. What? This time, Qin Wukong was truly shocked. Qin Mu was still fine as he was only a 9th-level heavenly god. However, Jin Ju was no small matter. He was in existence at the half-step Divine King realm, yet he had actually died at the hands of Lu Ming. This brat can't be left alive. Qin Wukong had this thought. What is this kid's cultivation level? Qin Wukong asked. 5th-level celestial deity, but his combat strength is shocking. At least equivalent to a half-step divine king with a degree of 70 to 80% divine power awakening. Jin Xing said. Such strength? Alright, leave this brat to me. When his 3 months are up, I'll challenge him and kill him here. Qin Wukong's voice was incomparably cold. Although Lu Ming could kill Jin Ju, he was confident that he could kill Lu Ming as well. Now, his Shen power had awakened to 99%. Adding on the fact that the maturity of his Shen skills was shocking, he was confident. Apart from the few people who had awakened the origin divine power factor, he was invincible among those below the God-King level. With Brother Wukong taking action, that brat is dead for sure. Jin Xing was overjoyed. He looked at Lu Ming with an even more ferocious gaze. Next, Qin Wukong did not cultivate. He stood on the stone platform and waited quietly. Naturally, Lu Ming was completely unaware of all this. He was completely focused on comprehending the god's divine power. As expected of the second row of stone platforms, the effect was simply too good. It was not something that the lower rows could compare to. The difference in effect was tens of times. Lu Ming's awakening level of the ruler's divine power was rapidly increasing. With the increase in the degree of awakening of the god's divine power, Lu Ming's strength had also improved. Very quickly, 3 months had passed. The universe and the starry sky disappeared. Lu Ming opened his eyes on the stone platform. 88%. Lu Ming muttered. The degree of awakening of the ruler's divine power had reached 88%. Lu Ming had only been cultivating here for 9 months and his awakening of ruler's divine power had increased from 1 to 2% to 88%. If others were to know about this, their jaws would probably drop. This speed was too shocking. I really don't know how amazing the effects of the first row are. With my current strength, I should be able to challenge the first row. Lu Ming muttered and then stood up. Boom! As soon as Lu Ming stood up, he felt a strong pressure pressing down on him. At the same time, a young man appeared in front of him, staring at him coldly. This young man was naturally Qin Wukong. As soon as Lu Ming woke up, Qin Wukong rushed to Lu Ming's stone platform. It's him. Hee, I didn't look for him, but he did look for me. That's good. Lu Ming revealed a smile. Kid, you can still laugh at a time like this? Qin Wukong said coldly. Why can't I laugh? You're here to die, so of course I have to laugh. Lu Ming continued to smile. I'm here to die. Huh, looks like you're very confident after defeating a few people. I want to see how strong your combat power is as a 5th-level celestial deity. Qin Wukong said coldly. As he spoke, a dazzling radiance burst forth from his body. His divine power burned like flames, stirring up a terrifying gale that crushed toward Lu Ming. An ancient aura bloomed wantonly. The origin divine power factor, no, it hasn't awakened yet. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. He thought that Qin Wukong had awakened the divine force factor. However, after sensing carefully, he realized that Qin Wukong had not awakened the divine force factor at all. However, he was not far from awakening it. So powerful. I'm afraid Qin Wukong's divine power has already awakened to 99%. Among the crowd, there were some knowledgeable people who had seen through Qin Wukong's background. With such an aura, he's indeed just one step away from completely awakening the origin divine power factor. This will be interesting. Many people were discussing. Lu Ming was a monstrous existence. He was able to kill a half-step divine king like Jin Ju even though he was only at the 5th level heavenly deity realm. Then, could he fight with Qin Wukong? Boom! At this moment, Qin Wukong made his move. He threw out a punch and a huge fist print headed towards Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. Ancient God Body. Without hesitation, Lu Ming cast his Ancient God Body and activated the battle character formula that multiplied his combat power by 4. Facing an opponent like Qin Wukong, Lu Ming had no choice but to go all out. The long spear trembled and a dazzling spear radiance broke through the air, piercing toward Qin Wukong's fist imprint. Boom! The spear radiance and the fist print collided, causing a terrifying energy wave to erupt and sweep in all directions. Fortunately, the Heaven's favorites cultivating on the other stone platforms were protected by the formation. The energy didn't affect them in the slightest. Otherwise, they would have been seriously injured or even killed. Buzz! The spear radiance shook continuously and then exploded. At the same time, the huge fist print also exploded. I blocked it. Lu Ming could actually block Qin Wukong's punch. Many people were shocked. Qin Wukong's eyes also focused. This kid is a monster. Kill him. Qin Wukong gave a low roar and pushed his divine power to the limit. The power of his divine power, which had awakened to 99%, burst out in full force, turning into a terrifying fist print that blasted toward Lu Ming. The Great Battle with Qin Wukong. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. Qin Wuxiang's strength was extremely terrifying. His divine power had awakened to 99%, and its power was astonishing. Not only was it extremely condensed, but it also had a trace of the characteristics of origin divine power, which was full of destructive power. Using this divine power to display the 7-injury fist was not something the Qin clan's Heaven's favorites from before could compare to. Moon slaying. Lu Ming activated the divine energy in his body to the extreme. With the 7 types of divine-grade divine energy as the core, he condensed them into a ball and struck out along with the power of the long spear. Boom! The second collision between the two of them was even more terrifying. The stone platform under their feet shook violently. This time, the two of them were still equally matched, and it was difficult to determine who was better. The people in the audience were really shocked, especially Jin Xing. Although Lu Ming was stronger than him when they fought in the Qin Heaven Galaxy, there was a limit. It had only been a short while and Lu Ming's strength had already reached such a level. This level of strength could completely kill him in seconds. 7-injury divine fist. Qin Wukong let out a long howl and continuously punched out with both his fists. One after another, fist seals emerged from his body and pressed down on Lu Ming. Sky-breaking, moon-cutting, Lu Ming continued to cast the first 2 moves of the 3 apocalyptic strikes as he fought with Qin Wukong. The two of them fought intensely and continuously. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of moves, but it was difficult to determine the winner. Satisfying. The more Lu Ming fought, the more excited he became. His fighting spirit grew stronger and stronger. He was more and more used to the 3 apocalyptic strikes. His divine power was endless. He was not afraid of using up his divine power. Every move he made could push the power to the extreme. As for Qin Wukong, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. Lu Ming was only a 5th-level celestial deity. With his cultivation base, he originally thought that he could easily take him down. However, Lu Ming's combat strength far exceeded his expectations. Up until now, he had not managed to take down Lu Ming. It seems that I have to go all out. Qin Wukong's eyes flashed. Then, his body suddenly retreated. In the process of his retreat, a ray of green light suddenly appeared on his body. Buzz! In the next moment, Qin Wukong's figure disappeared. On the stone platform, a series of afterimages appeared. This was a terrifying speed-type divine skill. When it was used, the sky was filled with afterimages, and the speed was astonishing. With Lu Ming's current eyesight, it was difficult for an average speed to leave an afterimage in his eyes. To be able to leave an afterimage in front of his eyes, one could see how fast the speed was. It was faster than Lu Ming's eyesight. Speed-type divine skill, level 8. Lu Ming muttered. He could tell that Qin Wukong was using a speed-type divine skill. However, it had already reached the 8th level. For those below the God King level, being able to cultivate a God technique to the 8th level was already extremely impressive. For example, the Qin clan's prodigy and Jin Ju had only cultivated their divine skills to the 7th level. 7 Injury Divine Fist. Qin Wukong's voice rang out again. Then, from all directions, fist prints blasted toward Lu Ming and completely enveloped him. The combination of a speed-type divine skill and the 7 Injury Divine Fist sealed off all escape routes, and its power increased even more. In an instant, dozens of fist prints were blasted toward Lu Ming. Do you think you're the only one who has the 8th level of a speed-type divine skill? Lu Ming muttered. Divine energy surged on his body and condensed into a 9th heaven Kunpeng. This 9th heaven Kunpeng was very small and was only slightly bigger than Lu Ming. With a flap of its wings, Lu Ming disappeared from where he was. In the eyes of the others, Lu Ming had also turned into a series of afterimages as he shuttled through the many fist imprints. His speed was so fast that he was not slower than Qin Wukong. Lu Ming's 9 heavenly Kunpeng technique had also been cultivated to the 8th stage. The 9 heavenly Kunpeng technique was known for its long-distance flight and extremely fast speed. But now, Lu Ming had used it to move within a short distance. It was extremely powerful and he had completely dodged Qin Wukong's fist. This kid's speed-type divine skill has also been cultivated to the 8th level. Damn it! Qin Wukong roared in his heart. He was truly shocked. Buzz! His figure came to a sudden stop. He retracted his fist force, gathered it, and rushed toward Lu Ming. In the process of rushing out, Qin Wukong opened his mouth and let out a long howl. From his mouth, a terrifying vibration was emitted. The air above Qin Wukong's mouth began to vibrate at a visible rate. In the end, it actually turned into many combat swords and slashed toward Lu Ming. Clang! Clang! Lu Ming waved his long spear to block it. When the combat sword hit the long spear trembled continuously and buzzed. Lu Ming's body trembled slightly and he took a few steps back. What a powerful divine skill! It's the 8th level of an attack-type divine skill. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. Qin Wukong was indeed powerful. No wonder he was so confident. Not only had he cultivated a speed-type divine skill to the 8th level, but he had also cultivated an attack-type divine skill to the 8th level. The power of the 8th level of the offensive divine skill had already surpassed the 7 Injury Divine Fist. Die! Qin Wukong roared. He opened his mouth and howled. The air trembled and formed more combat swords that slashed toward Lu Ming. Divine Dragon Phenomenon, 9-clawed Divine Dragon. Lu Ming shouted and stepped forward. 7 9-clawed Divine Dragons formed and pounced at Qin Wukong, clashing with his sword. Boom! 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 The rumbling sounds continued. The 9-clawed Divine Dragon was no match for it. It trembled violently and was finally split in half. However, Lu Ming cast the ice chain again. The 9 ice chains danced around like long snakes. When Qin Wukong's combat sword struck the ice chains, a clanging sound could be heard. However, it did not break the ice chains and was instead blocked by them. How is that possible? Qin Wukong was shocked. His offensive divine skill was known for its offensive power. He had cultivated it to the 8th level, and with the support of his 99% awakened divine power, its power was shocking and its destructive power was extremely strong. However, Lu Ming had actually blocked it. Break the sky. Lu Ming took the opportunity to launch an attack. A ray of spear light burst out and pierced toward Qin Wukong. Qin Wukong was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but it was already too late. He could only barely avoid his vital parts. The spear radiance swept across his body. Half of his body was almost blown apart. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. It was a terrible sight. Lu Ming, I want you to die. Qin Wukong's eyes were bloodshot. His body emitted even more terrifying waves of energy. Boom! Qin Wukong threw out 2 consecutive punches. The 2 fist prints converged into one, emitting a piercing blood-red color. It crushed toward Lu Ming with a frightening power. Its power has increased by a level. It said that the Qin family's 7-injury divine fist gets stronger the more injured you are. It's true. Lu Ming's mind was racing. He had injured Qin Wukong just now, but it had instead allowed Qin Wukong to activate the power of the 7-injury divine fist to its maximum. Let's see how long you can last. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. He did not believe that if he beat the other party until he was half dead, the other party would still be able to erupt with combat strength. Buzz! And NBSP whoosh! The 9 ice chains danced around him, forming a defensive wall. Stepping onto the first row, please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. Boom! Qin Wukong's 7-injury fist print bombarded the defensive wall formed by the ice chains. The ice chains shook violently, but they managed to block it and did not shatter. Even so, there was still a terrifying force surging toward Lu Ming, forcing him to retreat. However, after Lu Ming took a few steps back, he took a step forward and soared into the sky. Then, he looked down from above and waved his spear. Space breaking, space breaking. In an instant, Lu Ming executed more than a dozen moves of space piercing. More than a dozen spear lights fell like stars and blasted toward Qin Wukong. Qin Wukong was helpless. He could only continue to punch. However, even though the 7-injury divine fist would be more powerful after being injured, it also had a drawback, which was that it would add injuries to the injuries. If he couldn't finish off his opponent in a short time, his injuries would only get worse. Just like that, Lu Ming and Qin Wukong continued to fight and exchanged dozens of moves. It had to be said that Qin Wukong was a terrifying opponent. He was extremely talented. No matter if it was divine skills, secret arts, or divine power, he was not weak. If his divine power was completely awakened and he awakened the origin factor of divine power, he would definitely be able to pass through the heaven gate. Moreover, the more injured he was, the more powerful the 7 injuries divine fist would be. Lu Ming had almost used all his means, but he could not take down Qin Wushang in a short time. However, after such a long battle, Qin Wushang's injuries were getting more and more serious, and the power of the 7-injury fist was starting to weaken. The 7-injury fist couldn't defy the heavens. When the injury reached a certain level, the power wouldn't increase, but would weaken instead. Pfft! After exchanging another blow with Lu Ming, Qin Wukong's body trembled and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. Detestable. Qin Wukong let out a furious roar. He gritted his teeth and his body suddenly retreated. In an instant, he had retreated out of the range of the stone platform. He directly admitted defeat. Why don't you dare to fight? Didn't you want to kill me? We haven't even fought to the death and you're already leaving? Lu Ming's mocking voice was heard. Qin Wukong gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with crazy killing intent. However, he did not speak. He took out a healing pill and swallowed it. He focused on healing his injuries. Qin Wukong was actually defeated. Many people murmured. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe. Qin Wukong was actually defeated at the hands of a 5th-level heavenly deity. Qin Wukong was definitely a top existence below the God King level. Other than the few geniuses who had awakened the origin divine power, he was almost an invincible figure. Such a character was actually defeated at the hands of a 5th-level celestial deity. This Lu Ming is so scary, he's indeed terrifying. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation base is slightly weaker, if his cultivation base were to increase and reach the half-step divine king realm. No, as long as he's at the 9th level of the celestial deity realm, I'm afraid no one below the divine king realm would be his match. Many people exclaimed. The expressions of Jin Xing, Qin Wukong, and the others turned even uglier. He. On the stone platform, Lu Ming swept a glance at Qin Wukong and the others before turning around. However, he did not sit down. His gaze was fixed on the 3 stone platforms in the first row. Many people were shocked. Could it be that Lu Ming wanted to challenge the people in the first row? With his strength, he might really succeed. Someone spoke, and many people nodded. Indeed, among the 3 people in the first row, other than the heaven's favorite who had awakened the primordial divine power factor, the other 2 might not be as strong as Qin Wukong. If Lu Ming could defeat Qin Wukong, he might be able to defeat the other 2 and secure a position. Many people's eyes lit up as they anticipated another peak battle. Lu Ming indeed wanted to challenge the people in the first row. He could only cultivate for 3 years here. Lu Ming had been cultivating for 9 months. Time was precious. Of course, Lu Ming would use the remaining time to cultivate in the most effective position. Lu Ming swallowed a few divine pills and refined the medicinal effects to recover. This wait lasted for 5 days. At this moment, a young man in the first row began to glow. It's him, Su Yan. Many people's hearts trembled. The person suffused with light was the genius who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His name was Su Yan. Lu Ming will definitely not challenge Su Yan. Many people shook their heads. Indeed, Lu Ming had no intention of challenging Su Yan. With his current abilities, he was no match for him. Su Yan opened his eyes and stood up, frowning. What a pity. With a low sigh, Su Yan actually stepped out and directly left the stone platform. He turned into a rainbow light and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Su Yan has left. It seems that he has been cultivating here for 3 years. The 3-year period is up. There is no point in staying here. Looking at his expression, his divine power shouldn't have awakened for the 2nd time. Of course. How can the 2nd awakening of Shen power be so easy? Every time Shen power awakens, the difficulty is 10 times harder than the previous one. Anyone below the God King level who can awaken it for the first time is already a genius among geniuses. A 2nd awakening is simply impossible. After seeing Su Yan leave, many people began to discuss. He's actually gone. That saves me a lot of trouble. Lu Ming smiled. He took a step forward and appeared on the stone platform that Su Yan was on earlier. Lu Ming has indeed gone up. Many people shook their heads. Lu Ming stepped onto the stone platform in the first row. No one dared to challenge him. What a joke. Even Qin Wukong had been defeated. If he went up without awakening the origin divine power factor, wouldn't he be asking for humiliation? There were quite a number of people who were competing for Lu Ming's position. After a round of fighting, the stone platform was occupied by one person. As for Lu Ming, no one challenged him. After a day, a light screen enveloped Lu Ming. He sat cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. It was still the same starry sky, and the original gods were still fighting. However, the feeling was much clearer. Very soon, Lu Ming found the origin divine energy of the ruler's divine power and began to study it. Buzz! A streak of original divine power of a ruler's divine power flew towards Lu Ming. At first, Lu Ming was unconcerned. However, the next moment, his expression changed. This was because when this strand of divine power flew over, it actually scattered into dozens of strands. Then, each strand of divine power actually turned into a figure and charged toward Lu Ming. The cold killing intent, the ear-piercing energy, everything was so real. Lu Ming instinctively blocked it. The 9 ice chains flew out and blocked in front of him. Boom! Boom! The origin divine power of the ruler's divine power transformed into dozens of figures and attacked the ice chains. The ice chains trembled continuously. Lu Ming felt as if he had been hit by a planet. His body was thrown back, his chi and blood boiling, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It's true. It's true. It has offensive power. Lu Ming's gaze turned solemn. This attack was not an illusion, but real. Then come. Lu Ming's fighting spirit was strong. He wanted to use his ancient god body, but he realized that he could not. It was useless to trigger the battle formula. It seems like I can only rely on divine power and divine skills to resist. Lu Ming muttered. He condensed a long spear in his hand and charged forward. There are also iron-headed ones. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron. Lu Ming thrust his spear forward, while the figure formed by the origin divine power threw a punch. Their attacks collided. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Lu Ming's body swayed slightly, while the figure was sent flying. This kind of fluctuation, Lu Ming was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted and his eyes lit up. In the exchange of blows just now, Lu Ming could clearly feel that his opponent was completely condensed from the origin divine energy of the ruler's divine power. In the collision, Lu Ming could feel the mystery of the origin divine energy even more clearly. No wonder, no wonder. Is this the purpose of the first row of stone platforms? Lu Ming was overjoyed. The first row of stone platforms was for direct combat with the corresponding divine power of the origin. This way, the effect would naturally be much better. Previously, he had only been watching. Now, he was fighting directly, so the effect was naturally different. Buzz! And NBSP whoosh! At this moment, many figures were rushing over from all directions. Come on! Come on! Lu Ming was excited. He waved his long spear and rushed forward. In such a battle, not only could he experience the origin divine power personally, but he could also hone his various divine skills and secret skills. This was Lu Ming's favorite method. Lu Ming was also fighting with dozens of figures formed by the divine power of the origin. In the beginning, Lu Ming was completely outmatched. Fortunately, the injuries he sustained here would heal quickly and would not harm his body. Just like that, Lu Ming focused on cultivation. Outside the stone platform, in the crowd, Jin Xing, Qin Wukong, and the others were looking at Lu Ming, who was cultivating, with cold eyes. What do we do? Are we just going to let this kid continue to live his life? One of the Qin family members gritted his teeth and was extremely unhappy. Now, in Star Moon Ancient City, the only person in the Jin and Qin families who can kill this kid is brother Jin Yuan. Qin Wukong said. That's right. You guys wait here. I'll look for cousin Jin Yuan and get him to kill Lu Ming. Jin Xing gritted his teeth and said. But brother Jin Yuan, haven't you already been cultivating there for 3 years? You can't continue to challenge it. One of the Qin clan's elites said. It doesn't matter if you can't challenge him. We can wait outside. When the 3 years are up, he will naturally come down. At that time, we can just kill him. Jin Xing said coldly. Good idea. Let's do it this way. Well, keep watch here. Brother Jin Yuan, you'll have to trouble brother Jin Xing. Qin Wukong said. Alright, you guys wait for my good news. After Jin Xing finished speaking, his figure flashed and he left. Time flew by, and the days went by. People from the Myriad God Cliff's vicinity would come and go every day. He came and left and came again. However, many people were very surprised when they saw Lu Ming in the first row. Isn't that Lu Ming? I remember that he's only a 4th level heavenly deity, but he's actually able to sit in the first row? Some people were curious. Not a 4th level celestial deity, it's a 5th level celestial deity now. Furthermore, his combat strength is extremely terrifying and completely can't be measured with ordinary people. The person who had seen Lu Ming's move said. Hee, extremely terrifying? What a joke. How terrifying could a 5th level celestial deity be? The way I see it, it's you trash, right? To actually let a 5th level celestial deity seize the first row's throne. A golden-robed young man sneered, his face full of mockery. Many people's faces turned ugly. The golden-robed young man's words had scolded everyone who had seen Lu Ming fight before, including Qin Wukong. So you're going to challenge him? Someone said. Of course, the throne in the first row is mine. The golden-robed youth laughed, his face full of confidence. Oh. The others nodded and didn't say anything else. The gold-robed young man had already scolded them, so they naturally wouldn't say anything more. They would go and remind the gold-robed young man. Very soon, Lu Ming had been cultivating for 3 months. The light screen on his body flashed and Lu Ming opened his eyes. 98%. As expected, the further I progress, the slower the improvement. Lu Ming muttered. After 3 months of cultivation, the degree of awakening of Lu Ming's ruler's divine power had reached 98%. The effects of the first row of seats were extremely good, but the difficulty of the subsequent upgrades was getting higher and higher. If he were to cultivate in the lower rows, the degree of awakening would probably be far from 98%. I've been cultivating for a year. 2 more years should be enough for me to awaken. Lu Ming smiled faintly. At this moment, he suddenly felt a powerful aura pressing down on him. Then, he saw a young man in a golden robe land in front of him. You want to challenge me? Lu Ming was slightly stunned and asked. Initially, he thought that after he had defeated Qin Wukong, no one would dare to challenge him anymore. He did not expect that there would be someone who was stubborn. Of course. I wasn't around before, so you were able to cultivate in the first row for a while. Consider it your good fortune. Now, get out of my sight. The golden-robed young man shouted coldly, and a powerful aura emanated from his body. He was extremely arrogant. Half-step Divine King Realm. This golden-robed young man's cultivation base was not weak. He had reached the half-step Divine King Realm. No wonder he was so confident. However, the degree of his divine power awakening was far from enough. It was only about 50%. Compared to Qin Wukong, he was far inferior. Outside, many people had mocking smiles on their faces, as if they were watching a good show. This person still wanted to challenge Lu Ming. Was he not looking for abuse? However, This person was too arrogant, and no one warned him. Is that so? Lu Ming muttered and suddenly shouted, "Get lost!" A powerful aura burst out of his body and charged toward the golden-robed young man. The golden-robed young man's expression changed. He said gloomily, "Lu Ming, don't think that you can be arrogant in front of me just because you have some talent. Now is not the time for you to be arrogant. I've already given you a chance. You're the one who refused to get lost. I can only make you get lost personally." With that, the young man in the gold robe moved and charged toward Lu Ming, launching a fierce attack. Roar! Lu Ming let out an ancient god's roar. His body quickly enlarged and transformed into an ancient god body. Then, he swept his spear out. And NBSP boom boom boom. The long spear crushed the golden-robed young man's attack and instantly shattered it. The terrifying spear radiance continued to lash at the golden-robed young man. "Why would I?" The golden-robed young man roared with a look of disbelief on his face. He then used all his strength to block. However, when the long spear struck down, the golden-robed young man screamed in pain. All his defenses were instantly shattered, and he was sent flying by the long spear. However, before he could fly out of the stone platform, a few ice chains flew over and wrapped around the golden-robed young man. Then, they were waved and thrown onto the stone platform. Bang! 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 The golden-robed young man kept smashing onto the stone platform. Lu Ming had deliberately controlled it. Every time, it was the golden-robed young man's face that smashed onto the stone platform. The golden-robed young man's teeth and blood flew out, and his face was smashed into a deformed shape. "Who asked you to be so arrogant? You deserve it." Many people muttered, but they still felt a chill. Lu Ming was too violent. Awakening the Origin Divine Power Factor. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. From the beginning to the end, the gold-robed young man had been crushed by Lu Ming. Although the golden-robed young man was a half-step divine king, he had only awakened about 50% of his divine power and his divine skill had only reached the 7th stage. Compared to Qin Wukong, his combat strength was far inferior. Moreover, in the past few months, the degree of awakening of Lu Ming's ruler's divine power had increased by a notch. His combat strength had also improved. Naturally, it was easy for him to deal with the gold-robed young man. He could completely crush him. After more than a dozen hits, Lu Ming controlled the ice chain and swung it, throwing the gold-robed young man away. The gold-robed young man barely managed to stabilize himself in the air. He looked at Lu Ming in horror. "I already told you to get lost, but you didn't. Why did you stay and be tortured? Why bother?" Lu Ming's voice was heard. The golden-robed young man was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. He used his movement technique and left without looking back. He didn't even compete for the other stone platforms. He was really too embarrassed. After beating up the gold-robed young man, Lu Ming continued to sit cross-legged and wait. A day later, a layer of light enveloped Lu Ming and he continued to cultivate. Time flew by, and another 3 months passed. In the past 3 months, Lu Ming's degree of awakening of his ruler's divine power had reached 99%. However, it stopped after it reached 99%. The degree of awakening had reached 99%. The next step was to completely awaken the Origin Divine Power Factor. However, this step was extremely difficult. 1 step away, and they were worlds apart. Many people were stuck at this step for their entire lives. It was not that easy for Lu Ming to make a breakthrough. Continue cultivating. I don't believe that I can't break through. Lu Ming pondered. He would continue cultivating after a day. This time, no one challenged Lu Ming. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Lu Ming had been cultivating here for 1.5 years. After 3 months of cultivation, Lu Ming's understanding of the ruler's divine power had deepened. However, the degree of awakening was still at 99%. He continued cultivating. After that, no one challenged Lu Ming. 3 months, and another 3 months. Finally, after 2 years of cultivation, Lu Ming had a breakthrough. The chief sovereign's divine power had finally awakened the origin divine power factor. Once the origin divine power factor was awakened, the divine power seemed to undergo a qualitative change. The divine power was filled with a strange factor that made the power of the divine power extremely terrifying. If the chief sovereign's divine power from before was like rotten wood, then the chief sovereign's divine power now was like steel. He was much stronger. Lu Ming felt it carefully and was overjoyed. It was no wonder prodigies who had awakened the origin divine power factor had such terrifying battle power. For example, Lan Ling's battle power was so strong that he could definitely suppress a god king like the Night Demon King. With my current combat strength, it should be easy for me to defeat Qin Wukong. I should be able to suppress a god king like the Night Devil King. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. The 3-month period was up again. Lu Ming opened his eyes and felt refreshed. At this moment, he felt his back jump up slightly, and a cold killing intent enveloped him. Previously, he was also shrouded in killing intent. However, Lu Ming did not have much of a reaction because the owner of the killing intent was not a threat to him. However, this time, Lu Ming's body had a natural reaction. This meant that the owner who emitted the killing intent was a threat to him. Lu Ming turned to look. Gold ingot. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He saw Jin Xing, Jin Yuan, and the others outside the stone platform. The killing intent that made his body tense up was from Jin Yuan. Lu Ming, very good. You dare to kill the Jin clan's prodigy. Very good. Jin Yuan said coldly when he saw Lu Ming looking at him. He did not hide his cold killing intent at all. On the side, many people kept their distance from Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan was in existence who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His strength was terrifying, and no one could stop him when he was in a frenzy. Jin family's trash, I've even invited you here. However, I don't have time to fight with you now. Lu Ming said calmly. He still had a year's time. Having said that, Lu Ming turned his head and stopped paying attention to Jin Yuan. Humph, the 3-year period will be over soon. If you don't dare to come out now, let's see how you'll hide after the 3-year period is over. I'll wait for you here. Gold Ingot said coldly. As you wish. Lu Ming left this sentence and did not speak anymore. This made Jin Yuan's gaze even colder. Lu Ming is in danger. I didn't expect that Jin Xing would invite Jin Yuan, it's indeed dangerous. Lu Ming should have left earlier. He was too greedy. He occupied the first row and wanted to cultivate for 3 years. He's going to lose his life now. Some people were discussing in low voices. No one thought that Lu Ming could fight against Jin Yuan. Although Lu Ming was powerful, there was not much of a difference between him and Qin Wukong. At most, he was slightly stronger than Qin Wukong. However, Jin Yuan was in existence who had awakened the origin divine power factor. His battle prowess was definitely much stronger than Qin Wukong's. Even if Lu Ming continued to cultivate, he would not be Jin Yuan's match. Unless Lu Ming had also awakened the origin divine power factor. However, was this possible? Lu Ming was only a 5th-level celestial deity. Before he came here, his degree of awakening was definitely not high. It was impossible for him to awaken the divine power factor in 3 years. Every time, many geniuses would enter Star Moon Ancient City, and many people would cultivate in Myriad God Cliff. Many people were aware of the effects of cultivating in Myriad God Cliff. Although the effect was much better than training outside, it was almost impossible to awaken the origin divine power factor in one training session. For people like Jin Yuan who had awakened the origin divine power factor, it was only after they had entered this place to cultivate and left Star Moon Ancient City that they had successfully awakened it after a long period of accumulation. There were very few people in history who succeeded in their awakening after one cultivation session, let alone Lu Ming, who was only a 5th-level celestial deity. Without awakening the origin divine power factor, how could he be Jin Yuan's match? Therefore, many people felt that Lu Ming was in danger. Some people had wanted to leave, but now, they stayed. They wanted to see what would happen to Lu Ming, this unparalleled genius. Lu Ming could not be bothered to think too much. A day later, he entered the state of cultivation and entered the starry sky again. Now that I've successfully awakened the ruler's divine power, it's impossible for me to make a major breakthrough in a short time if I continue to comprehend it. I'd better comprehend other divine powers. Lu Ming pondered. The first awakening was equivalent to the first firmament of divine power, but it was extremely difficult to reach the second firmament, 10 times more difficult than the first awakening. It was impossible for him to break through in a short period of time. Therefore, Lu Ming decided to study another kind of divine energy. After some consideration, Lu Ming decided to study the inextinguishable sword force. The inextinguishable sword force was mainly for attacking. If he could successfully awaken it, it would greatly increase Lu Ming's offensive power. Of course, he had to first find the origin divine power that corresponded to the inextinguishable sword force. Lu Ming shuttled through the starry sky in search of the origin divine energy corresponding to the inextinguishable sword force. Battling Jin Yuan. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron. Lu Ming was looking for the corresponding origin divine energy of the inextinguishable sword force. Whoosh! In the endless starry sky, a beam of sword chi pierced through the universe and swept across the starry sky. Wherever the sword chi passed, planets exploded one after another. Even a few stars were extinguished. Lu Ming was flabbergasted by the huge and boundless sword chi that pierced through the starry sky. It took him a long time to react. What a terrifying sword chi! Lu Ming was shocked. Then, his eyes lit up. This was the origin divine power of the inextinguishable sword force. Lu Ming approached them rapidly, channeling the inextinguishable sword force at the same time. Whoosh! A beam of sword chi slashed at Lu Ming. The aura almost made Lu Ming's mind collapse. He only managed to calm himself down after letting out a loud roar. Buzz! And NBSP whoosh! The sound of the sword rang out unceasingly. The sword chi split into more than 10 rays and turned into more than 10 immortal sword lights, slashing toward Lu Ming. Come on! Lu Ming's fighting spirit was revealed. He held his long spear and went forward to fight against the sword radiance. This sword light was the same as the chief sovereign's origin divine power. When used to attack, one would be able to comprehend origin divine power even faster. Just like that, 3 months passed. Lu Ming's understanding of the inextinguishable sword force increased rapidly, especially in the early stages. The speed of improvement was even faster. 9 months later, Lu Ming had cultivated the inextinguishable sword force to 99%. However, it was very difficult to break through here. After that, Lu Ming spent another 3 months, but his inextinguishable sword force still did not break through. He did not successfully awaken the divine power factor. What a pity, there's no time. On the stone platform, Lu Ming opened his eyes and sighed softly. The 3 years were up. If Lu Ming was given another half a year, he was confident that he could successfully awaken the divine power factor of the inextinguishable sword force. But now, he was still a little short. When the light screen on Lu Ming's body disappeared, a cold killing intent enveloped him. Lu Ming, the 3-year period is up. Let's see how you die. A cold voice came from behind him. Lu Ming did not need to look to know that it was Jin Yuan. Lu Ming turned around and saw a few eyes filled with killing intent staring at him. In the last year, Jin Yuan and the rest had been guarding the place to prevent Lu Ming from escaping in secret. The 3-year period is up. What will Lu Ming do? Many people had the same thought. They stared at Lu Ming, wanting to see what he could do. How do I die? You think you can kill me? Lu Ming smiled faintly, then stood up and left the stone platform. He walked towards Jin Yuan. Many people were stunned. Lu Ming actually walked out just like that. His attitude was so arrogant, as if he did not care about Jin Yuan at all. If you want to fight, then come up and fight. Lu Ming took a step forward and soared into the sky. He stood high in the air, his body exuding a strong fighting spirit. The others were even more stunned. This result was different from what they had imagined. Lu Ming did not think of a way to escape, nor did he beg for mercy. Instead, he challenged Gold Ingot. Lu Ming actually challenged Jin Yuan. With his strength, he'll only die if he challenges Jin Yuan. Could it be that he has also awakened the origin divine power factor? The crowd discussed spiritedly as they thought of this possibility. That's impossible, right? Someone denied. Lu Ming had only cultivated for 3 years and he had awakened the origin divine force factor. This talent was too monstrous. How could others live? Many people chose not to believe it. You want to challenge me? Even Jin Yuan himself was slightly stunned. Then, his killing intent grew stronger. He soared into the sky and stood in front of Lu Ming. Boom! And NBSP Jin Yuan's entire body was enshrouded in dazzling golden divine power, and an ancient aura began to emanate from him. A terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Ming like a divine mountain. Lu Ming, I know that you're quite powerful. However, you're still far from being my match. Kneel down, die. Jin Yuan shouted. He reached out and pressed in the air. Golden light filled the air and a huge golden palm print was formed, pressing down on Lu Ming. The sky rumbled. The palm print had not yet pressed down, but the violent chi was already crushing Lu Ming like a storm. If it were any other 9th-level heavenly god prodigies, no, even half-step divine kings, they might not be able to block this move. However, Lu Ming's eyes were very calm. There was even a hint of anticipation in the depths of his eyes. He was looking forward to clashing with the other geniuses who had awakened the origin divine power factor. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out from Lu Ming's body. It was filled with an ancient aura. Then, a spear's gleam shot up into the sky, piercing through the clouds. The huge spear radiance collided with Jin Yuan's palm print, creating violent waves of power that swept in all directions. The dazzling radiance illuminated the sky as if a planet had exploded. In the next moment, the spear's gleam and the palm print disappeared at the same time. Lu Ming stood in the sky, motionless. Everyone was dumbfounded. It took a long time for someone to react. The origin divine force factor. Oh my god, it's the origin divine force factor. Lu Ming has also awakened the origin divine force factor, he has really awakened the origin divine power factor. This is impossible. How is this possible? Freak, freak. Many people were so excited that they couldn't help but shout. They had never expected that Lu Ming had also awakened the origin divine power factor. He had only cultivated for 3 years and was only at the 5th level heavenly god realm. Impossible, 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 Jin Xing roared in his heart, his eyes filled with disbelief. He had fought with Lu Ming in the Qin Heaven star system. However, he had not improved much yet, but Lu Ming had already awakened the origin divine power factor. He was known as one of the 4 heroes of the Jin family. He had always been very confident in his talent. However, compared to Lu Ming, his talent was trash. Jin Yuan was also extremely shocked. He looked at Lu Ming in shock. It was extremely rare for a 5th-level heavenly god to awaken the origin divine power. Jin Yuan had only heard that such a heaven-defying genius existed in the core regions of the Great Void Holy Dynasty. It had to be known that the higher one's cultivation was, the stronger one's Shen power would be, and the deeper one's understanding of Shen power would be. It would be easier to awaken the origin Shen power factor. The lower one's cultivation level, the more difficult it was. In the universal camp, anyone who had awakened the origin divine power factor below God King would be considered a 1 in a million supreme prodigy. However, the majority of those who had awakened their origin divine power were at the half-step God King realm. In history, the number of 9th-level heavenly deities awakening was extremely rare. Let alone a 5th-level heavenly deity. Is it very impressive to awaken the origin divine force factor? Lu Ming said calmly. His words were in response to Jin Yuan's earlier words. Jin Yuan had been acting all high and mighty just now, looking down on people who had not awakened the divine power factor. Lu Ming's words made Jin Yuan's face turn gloomy. You're only a 5th-level celestial deity. Even if you've awakened, your power is limited. Today, I'll kill you. Kill! Jin Yuan shouted, and the killing intent on his body became even stronger. The more talented Lu Ming was, the more he had to kill him. Boom! Jin Yuan stepped out. His palm was like a knife as he slashed at Lu Ming. Void severing hand. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. The Void-Breaking Sword. Please continue reading on Oxville. Omicron M. Earlier, Jin Yuan had only casually attacked, but now, he was serious and used the Void-Shattering Hand. The Void-Severing Hand was said to be able to sever the void. Under the activation of the origin divine power factor, its power was extremely powerful. It was not something people like Jin Ju and Jin Xing could compare to. Lu Ming's eyes were solemn. Ancient God Body. Lu Ming activated his ancient god body and turned into a green-armored ancient god. Then, he thrust his spear at Jin Yuan. Thump. It was as if 2 planets had crashed into each other. The void trembled like boiling water, and violent energy surged in all directions like the water of a vast ocean, making loud rumbling sounds. Lu Ming could feel a terrifying force coming from the long spear. He could not help but retreat. However, Jin Xing wasn't any better off. His body also floated back. Kill! Jin Yuan retreated and stepped into the air, charging toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming let out a long howl and charged forward with his spear. The two of them fought intensely. In terms of size, Lu Ming was much larger than Jin Yuan. However, Jin Yuan's strength was not any weaker than Lu Ming's. Boom! Boom! The two of them exchanged dozens of moves in a row, but there was no clear winner. Damn, how can this kid Shen power be so strong? Jin Yuan shouted in shock. Both of them had awakened the origin divine force factor, but he was a half-step divine king while Lu Ming was only a 5th-level heavenly god. Indeed, although Lu Ming controlled many types of divine powers, only one of them had awakened the origin divine power factor. Moreover, his cultivation was at the 5th-level heavenly god realm. He would not be able to fight against Jin Yuan by relying on only one type of ruler's divine power. However, he had other divine powers, especially the undying sword force, which had been awakened to 99%. This made up for the gap between them. With the activation of the battle character formula, which increased his battle power by 4 times, he was able to compete with Jin Yuan. Void-breaking sword, slash. Jin Yuan bellowed in rage. His glabella glowed and a golden combat sword flew out, slashing at Lu Ming. Lu Ming had seen Jin Xing use this move before. He was not surprised as he was prepared for it. Dragon roars were heard as 9-clawed divine dragons that were 10,000 meters long formed above Lu Ming's head. A total of 7 pounced toward Jin Yuan. However, 2 more 9-clawed divine dragons were formed after the 7, making a total of 9 divine dragons. After a period of cultivation, especially in the Myriad God Cliff where he fought against the figures condensed from the divine power, Lu Ming's divine dragon materialization technique had made another breakthrough. He could condense 9 divine dragon manifestations at once. Moreover, the divine dragon materialization art was even more terrifying with the support of the ruler's divine power, which had awakened the origin divine power factor. The 9 divine dragons pounced at Jin Yuan continuously. Jin Yuan controlled the void-breaking sword and slashed at the divine dragon. Boom! Boom! Terrifying clashing sounds rang out continuously as the 999-clawed divine dragons clashed with the void-breaking sword. Ice chains. Immediately after, Lu Ming cast the ice chain and attacked Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan hurriedly used the void-breaking hand to block it, but Lu Ming wielded his long spear and charged at Jin Yuan. Lu Ming used all his means and forced Jin Yuan to retreat continuously. He was at a disadvantage. The others were shocked. Was Gold Ingot going to lose today? This was a big deal. You want to defeat me? Impossible. Void-breaking sword, kill with 9 sword moves. Die. Jin Yuan bellowed. His entire body suddenly emitted a blinding light, and the space between his brows was like a small sun. Buzz. 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 Sword hum sounded, and golden combat swords rushed out of Jin Yuan's forehead. There were a total of 8, and with the one from before, there were 9 in total. Whoosh. 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 The golden void-severing sword continued to slash out, and the sword light whistled through the air with astonishing power. Lu Ming's expression changed. He swung his long spear continuously to block the golden sword. Clang! 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 The golden combat sword continuously slashed at the long spear. The long spear trembled violently, and the terrifying power of the void split through the long spear and spread to Lu Ming's entire body. Cracks appeared on the green scales on Lu Ming's body, and blood seeped out. Moreover, the long spear in Lu Ming's hand was cracked. What a shocking power! Lu Ming frowned. This spear was a high-grade level 9 divine artifact, but it could not block the other party's power. Kill, die. Jin Yuan shouted and controlled the void-splitting sword to continue slashing at Lu Ming. He wanted to kill Lu Ming in one go. Ice chains. Lu Ming controlled the ice chain and flew it back, enveloping himself in it. Clang! Clang! The space-severing sword struck the ice chains, producing clanking sounds and sparks. However, the ice chains were completely fine, only leaving a few marks on them. It's so hard. Jin Yuan's eyes narrowed in shock. The void-severing sword was said to be able to sever the void. Its destructive power was shocking. In addition, there were 8 of them attacking at the same time. The power was even more terrifying. However, they could not cut through Lu Ming's ice chains. I don't believe it. Cut, cut, cut. Die. Jin Yuan shouted and controlled the void-breaking sword to slash at Lu Ming wildly. However, it was blocked by the ice chains in the end. Although Lu Ming was pushed back by the powerful impact, the gold ingot could not hurt him at all. In the end, Gold Ingot even used the void-severing hand, but it was useless. Lu Ming hid in the ice chains and took the time to counterattack. He shot out rays of spear radiance at Jin Yuan. Lu Ming, what's the point of hiding in there? Come and fight me if you dare. Gold Ingot roared. This is my secret skill, a defensive secret skill. Does it not count as strength? What a joke. Lu Ming said in disdain. Jin Yuan gritted his teeth, speechless. Indeed, this was Lu Ming's secret skill and he did not rely on any treasure. Be it an offensive, defensive or speed secret skill, they were all part of his strength. Humph, don't think that I can't break your defense. Jin Yuan's face was filled with ruthlessness. At this moment, the 9 void-severing swords all flew back into his body and fused with it. The golden radiance on Jin Yuan's body grew even more intense. In the end, he turned into a golden combat sword and slashed at Lu Ming. Buzz! The golden sword radiance illuminated the sky as if it was going to split the sky in half. The sword chi whistled through the air in a terrifying manner. What a powerful force, block it for me. Lu Ming narrowed his eyes. This should be Jin Yuan's most powerful attack. Lu Ming controlled the 9 ice chains with all his might. His divine power was constantly flowing into the ice chains. Boom! Finally, the sword made of gold ingot hit the ice chain, and the ice chain shook violently. Bang! Bang! The next moment, something happened that made Lu Ming's eyes narrow. The ice chains broke one by one. After a few breaths, all 9 ice chains were broken. Then, the golden sword gleam slashed at Lu Ming's body. However, Lu Ming had the protection of the 9-layered scarlet gold armor. However, even the 9-layer crimson gold armor could not block the golden sword radiance. If you find any errors, ads pop-up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know a report so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.